Good evening, everyone. Good evening to councillors, Strategy Group members, members of the public who are here tonight, and also to the press. Warm welcome to Strategy Group meeting. My first duty tonight is to sign off the minutes held on the 15th of November 2018. Are you happy to stand? Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Mark, as always. Number received. I had an apology from Councillor Owen Swift, who hoped to be here, which is worried about weather. I just want to apology in case she doesn't turn up. Declarations of members' interests? No, thank you. We move on to the first item, corporate issues, community governance review. Can I ask Secretary to distribute the presentation, please?
What you've got before you is a report which is an interim report in the community governance review process. The issues are invited from parishes, and those have been considered by the working group, and people will now with some proposed recommendations. So essentially what we're asking Strategy Group to do this evening is to agree that those proposed recommendations can go back to the second stage consultation.
Thank you, Darren. Open for questions or comments. Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Consultations to form unitary authorities have progressed, and it is clearer that there is a real threat to parishes adjacent to the Northampton Borough will be absorbed into Northampton, losing their rural identity and becoming another suburb of Northampton. This is something that DDC has fought against for a number of years. This community governance review gives Malton and Overston a wonderful opportunity to secure their rural identity and not become another suburb of Northampton. The recommendation within this draft document states no change to Malton or Overston parish boundaries. I am very strongly against this suggestion. I have given each of you on the strategy committee at the moment a copy of their response. I don't ask you to read it tonight, it's rather a long document, but I would ask that, if you could use it as some bedtime reading.
That's the best you can do, Councillor Warren.
I fully understand you're only voting tonight for the document to go out for the consultation, but I need you to fully understand the importance of the need for change to both Malton and Overston parish boundaries. Thank you, Chair.
That's good. Just to clarify that point, Tony, about the submission that came in after the consultation date.
Yes, Chairman. I haven't seen the document. Well, I may have seen the document that you've seen.
Yeah, that's probably to come to you, Tony, to be honest.
I have seen the document that was sent in by Malton Parish Council, but it was after the initial consultation period had closed. The issue they were raising was really about the boundary between Malton and Overston. In a way, was picked up by representations from Overston Parish Council during the initial consultation phase. So that issue has been discussed at one level. However, the point is that we're now going out for the second stage consultation, and the comments...
Yeah, I fully understand and accept that. I understand Overston put their original representation in. I believe they will be putting another one in, because I think they're wishing they hadn't actually put such a strong objection to it. I think they're coming a little bit round to Malton's view as such, and accept that there is some change required.
I presume they'll clarify that second round of
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. But I just wanted to highlight that
that's fine.
The importance of the change that is required over Malton and Overston.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, I think I could just come back on that point, Chairman. Yes, we are aware that positions have moved by both Malton and Overston during the course of the review, and they can be picked up during this stage of consultation.
Now, many thanks for presenting your rural case very well there, actually, Councillor Warren, Northampton Borough. Another member on the edge of Northampton Borough, Councillor Shepherd.
Chairman, thank you. I was a member of the working party here, although I wasn't able to attend any of the group meetings, though I was briefed very well by officers. The Boughton representation, Boughton asked to go from 9 till 10. The recommendation here is up to 11. I've got no particularly strong views on that. nor my understanding about it. It is slightly curious that the suggestion to go from 9 to 11 seems to be that, as a matter of principle, parishes should have odd numbers rather than even numbers. That seems to be justification coming forward in the recommendation. That's simply an observation. I don't want to make any further comments upon it. Harston, also in my patch, the consultation at Harston has produced an enormous number of responses. A large number of each side of the responses are very vocal indeed. And I'm certainly not going to trouble you with any details of those. But it does seem to be the case that there is a very strong view from both sides, as it were, that there should be a new parish created there. When the original reports were put together, when the original proposal to consult, to commence this review was put together, it was going to be effective in May 20. I just raised the question of, and perhaps it could be looked into an answer given at the council meeting rather than today. I just raised the question of whether May 20 is realistic for the potential creation of a new parish, were the anticipated consultation to repeat the earlier consultation, or were we to make a final decision presumably in May 19 of this council. I just flagged that as an interesting point, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, we're trying to create two unitaries by May 2020, so if possible we can do that maybe. I'm not sure it's there possible yet, it's not a continent. Just the observation that Councillor Shepherd's made.
Yes,
about time.
Yes, for you, Chair. Councillor Shepherd and I just had a conversation about this outside the room, and what I did say is I'd check this out for him and come and show him. The timetable, as I understand it, is prescribed as part of the review process, but we'll confirm the exact details certainly before that.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a comment about the consultation process. We often get remarks in this chamber, Chairman, that consultation is not effective, not enough people respond, etc., etc. Now, the responses in this exercise, interestingly, I read them all, of course, because I'm a member of the working group, and they range from 0 in some cases. We've just heard there was a large number in Halston, 198. The Crick proposal produced 542 responses, of which only 10 were in favour of their proposal, which I think shows that it, well, what it says to me, it doesn't prove anything, but what it indicates to me, Chairman, is that if people are really concerned about something, they will respond to a consultation. So don't lose heart over the consultation process.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you for allowing me to comment, Chair. The comment that I had planned to make has largely been made by Councillor Chandler. I find that actually quite fascinating. I think that there's a case for you sending a message of congratulations to Winnick for having such a high proportion. But it raises questions, or it raises some interesting thoughts about why the issues appear to have been very much more important to some areas than to others, or whether it does come down to the way in which the consultation was promoted locally, the role that the parish councils played in making sure that people were aware of it, and so on. It strikes me. I would have thought that there were many university research departments that would love this sort of data for a student, just to try to find out what actually lies behind these figures, so that we have an understanding of what actually happens when a consultation starts. Clearly what happened in Winnick and what happened in Crick, which is a surprising one, because although it's a wider area than Crick, they were not exactly issues that I would have thought would have been burning for many electors. Just to find out just what the mechanics were and why there was so little interest, why nothing happened in Parkinson, places like Daventry and Byfield. I got 2 comments though on the recommendations. The first is in Byfield. Now, the last parish by-election, there were only 5 candidates for 11 seats, and the recommendation is therefore that the number of seats be reduced from 11 to 9. Well, you know, if there's not sufficient interest, you don't solve the problem by changing the number of seats that there are in the parish council. There is something wrong. It doesn't become any better. Local democracy doesn't become any poorer because you have a higher proportion of the seats that are full. There may be issues around the quorum if it's set as a percentage of the total membership, but it just doesn't seem to be the right response. And there is another case in Parkinson where. Parkinson, there were actually 10 candidates in the last election for 7 seats. And yet the proposal is to decrease the number of seats. It seems that the logic has been applied in different ways. It doesn't worry me greatly because I don't think there's very much logic in it anyway. Because it's not the issue.
That's a conclusion. Thank you, Councillor. Just one thing I say actually, this sort of mirrors a minor scope of the actual bigger picture unitary. West Ham's part of my war patch, and you look at West Ham, 130 responses, majority of them were in favour of taking over winning, and most of the winning didn't want to be taken over. So that's the sort of normal tribes and villages. And I see that's quite natural actually. I can understand that. And wait for the outcome, we'll wait and see. But when you think about what we're talking about the rest of Northamptonshire, very similar again. No, that's where I understand it from. So, and I also think if you want controversy, that's how to get responses to the consultation. You tell the local community something they don't like is going to happen, they will respond in numbers. We have been encouraged to. That's what my experience anyway. It's always about the issues around at the time, I think.
Thank you, Chair. My hope is that this data will not be lost and not simply regarded as the way in which people decided on parish boundaries.
I get that.
But there's more that this says about the nature of consultation.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, no, I thought the consultation was very good, actually.
Hold on.
Yeah, and it was well done. And I quote the one you quoted, actually, at the West Ham, in that the results were also interpreted very good. You know, where, yes, they'd had a high response, 72% in favour of the merger, but 27 against, and yet 27 against with a smaller population and one being taken over. So, you know, if you'd have gone on result, you'd have merged them, but you'd interpret it to see, and the words to say here that the working group considered that the consultation responses were heavily weighted towards West Ham and accepted the petition from Winwick as evidence of local support for no change. So the consultation, as I see it, in the majority of the cases, has been very good and interpreted and listened to what the local voice says.
Thank you, Joe, for that. Any other comments? If not, can we agree the 2 resolved items, please? Agree. Agree. Thank you. Tony, can I hand over to you again, please, for strategic risk register? Thank you, please.
Yes, Chair. We got before us effectively the annual review of the corporate strategic risk register. The papers on page 51 onwards with the coloured bars is the register we're considering, and the highlighted text shows the changes from the previous risk register. I think members will recall that you reviewed the strategic risk register partway through the year to reflect the issues around local reform. So, in a sense, it's a second review for during the last 12 months. The changes are actually set out in the section 4.4 of the report, and I believe are self-explanatory. I think questions, Joe?
Actually, Tony, I was just going to say, there's some Brexit's on there. It's a risk. So even though I thought we had the night off on Brexit, we're good here. Are there any questions or comments? If not, oh sorry, Councillor Ward.
Yeah, Chuck, I think we had this at corporate governance, but we weren't really talking about the content, it was more about the process, wasn't it? But at number 5, I'm just wondering how, when you get, when you look at 5, which is the major investments, you get a grading of red C2, and then after all the mitigation, you still end up with red C2. So it begs the question that if we did nothing, we'd still be in the same position. I'm just wondering whether that is because the grading isn't sophisticated enough to measure a change in mitigation, or whether in fact the fact if we just did nothing we'd be in the same position.
Good observation, Councillor. Good attorney.
I think if members could just go to page 55 and see this matrix, essentially it's this council's appetite, and you see there in terms of the impact, so an impact scoring 2 is critical, and within the definitions you can see that critical has a range of certainly it's Financial Times from 200,000 to £1 million. And also on the likelihood C is significant, which has a range of probability of 15% to 55%. So there is much scope for movement within those ranges without coming out of the C2 box on the matrix. I think it does, the comment you made, it does beg a question about the risk appetite, and perhaps at some stage we need to look at that to make more non-balanced.
I just wondered, whether just a decreasing, the red C2 decreasing might just be a way of indicating that the mitigation. Just an arrow would be, it probably ensure that we're comfortable that our mitigations actually are doing something. Just really a presentational thing, really.
I made a doubt, this was predominantly, or not entirely, since within my team. We are confident the mitigation measures are having a material impact on those risks. I want to happily assert that.
Thank you, Chair. I take Councillor Walker's point. It seems odd to have no reduction in the impact, but I think in terms of the mitigation actions in place, you couldn't argue with them, and you wouldn't want not to have them anyway, such as the second bullet point item, MTFP prudence, etc. But I do agree it's a matter of perception to the reader.
Thank you, Councillor.
I certainly think the actions are fair.
Thank you. You have to agree with the recommendation? Agree. Thank you. Thanks, Tony. Moving on to housing and environmental health issues, Daventry District Council provision of housing assistance. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. We're seeking approval to make amendment to the provision of housing assistance policy by way of removing 2 discretionary loans to bring empty houses back into use. Now, this is not about anything to do with people who are vulnerable or homeless or the assistance given to them. It's simply those premises that are vacant. There is a couple of loans that are available to the owners to bring them back into use. Number 1 is a loan for social needs letting. Now that is a condition that it is then let through the council choice-based limit letting system. That is a maximum of £15,000 and there is no interest levied on that. And there's a loan for own use or gain, Once again, it's limited to, it's a maximum of £15,000, but this time interest is paid. So the question being asked in this paper is, in fact, do these two loans, are they useful? Are they in use? Are they still viable in 2019? Now, bearing in mind we've only used one of these since their introduction in 2012. We went to consultation. That was a decision, I think, by Strategy Group to do that in December. And you'll see the consultation results at Appendix A, page 61. To ask really on whether in fact these two loans can be withdrawn and policy changed. Consultation went out, the public were invited, but targeted specifically were charity organisations and landlords, as well as the council's people's panel, to try and gauge exactly whether these two loans were still of use to our residents. Unfortunately, with all surveys, we only had 31 responses. Bear in mind there's about 79,000 in the district around there, which isn't a great response. And when you look and analyse the various responses, you get a feeling that there isn't really much appetite. Bear in mind, 6 of the 31 didn't even know these loans existed, so we were informing them. Bearing that in mind, bearing in mind the fact that we've only had one loan issued in all the time that these loans have been available, then take into account what the council do with houses that are empty and are causing problems or need updoing. There's a whole range of policies that cover that. And it just appears that these loans had their day. Maybe not in this council, in this district, certainly had their day. And I recommend that, one, that they are removed from the policy, and secondly, that the strategic housing plan and its action plan be amended accordingly.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, I just wondered, it seems quite a good loan scheme really, and there are lots of empty houses in the district that have just been sort of left, and I always thought it was our policy to try and get these homes back into use, or flats, or wherever they may be. And I just wondered why we don't seek more, go out and seek, when we find an empty home, why we don't initiate something to get them back into use.
Okay, I'll come back to the end of that point. Richard can pick up at the end. Councillor Guildford.
Yes, just to say that I support the idea of this amendment, etc. I just want to know the mechanics, if I may, of, so we give a loan for own use or gain, a normal interest payable loan. So is the charge or anything put on the property, or could you be at risk of them having the loan, doing the work, defaulting on the loan, and then selling the property again?
Okay, I'll come back to that.
That's a risk.
Thank you.
No risk, I know, because there's only one.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
A slightly different view, Jan.
Yeah.
If it's only produced one, that's one house that is back into being used for the kind of housing we want. When I was housing portfolio holder, I found that many people were not aware of the scheme. And I don't know if it's a fair criticism or not, but I didn't think that it was well known enough, and you had to probe to find it. That was my opinion. It may be a wrong opinion, and the officers may shoot me in a minute with their eyes.
I think it's on the back of what Wendy said, actually, very similar point.
But very similar to what Wendy said. So, yeah, I believe there could be a place for them, and that's my comments anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Griffin.
You'll have to forgive my memory, but we do have an empty home strategy, and I believe we do find where these empty homes are, and we do make an effort to find out who owns them and to do something about it. So presumably the question of the loan would come up then when officers approach the owner.
Okay, thanks Liz. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. I mean, it certainly seems, not just from the consultation, but from general perception, that there are very, very few people who know anything about this scheme. And that's not surprising, because there are very, very few people who face the problem of having an empty house that they want to bring back into use. It is a very specialised service that this loan is there to cover. I could understand that if we didn't have this sort of loan scheme, we might not spend a lot of time trying to create it. But I'm not quite sure what the advantages are, what we gain by actually getting rid of it, given that it is actually there. Councillor Margaret said that there were other ways. If somebody had an empty home and needed financial help for bringing it back into use, there were other ways in which it could be done. I wonder if in his remarks he might just explain just what these other methods are. What other financial help would be available then to somebody who otherwise might be able to get their house back into use through this particular loan scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Well, Councillor, you've got a few questions here. Officers here to support you in private.
Okay, yeah, I will. I'll probably hand over to Maria and she can fill in all the holes that I don't fill up. But the first point is that people have a right to have an empty home. You know, if they want their home to be empty, we don't have a massive problem here in the district, but it's their right. As long as it's not causing a major problem to anyone, then that is their perfect right to have it as an investment and to have an empty home. And with regard to the other, I never actually said there was any other financial ways of dealing with empty houses. I said there were other options. And certainly, Maria may inform us of some financial ways, but certainly when it comes down to other ways of dealing with empty houses problems, we have a range of informal and formal actions that DDC take, with support from partner agencies, and where appropriate, the council can do works in default which are charged to the property. So there are ways of enforcement to deal with empty houses. With regard to any grant schemes or other schemes that are available, I will refer that to the officer.
Thank you, Richard. Maria? You cover the holes at Richard.
Thank you. I'll make a few notes while councillors are asking comments. So, there are a very small number of empty homes that aren't covered by one of that council tax discounts. Less than 0.5%, which is probably about as low as you're going to get. We're not a district where you've got neighbourhoods of empty streets, empty properties. We haven't got boarded up properties. We haven't got loads of broken windows. We haven't got any no-go areas. We haven't got any sink estates. So when this was a national push more than a decade ago, it was really targeted, and that's when we developed our empty home strategy. What's made a massive difference in this district was we tried very hard when this came in. We spent 3 or 4 years promoting, directly contacting every owner of an empty home who wasn't one of those exempt properties, saying, we've got these available, no takers. We also promoted what Futures Housing had and still have, which was their private sector leasing scheme. This wasn't a loan, this was up to, I think it was £10,000 per unit that you would have invested in your property, and in exchange, they would use £10,000 of Futures grant money to rent a house up to lettable standards, and then they would lease it to tenants for up to 5 years. This was really popular in the Valley, absolutely no takers in Daventry district, and we promoted that to hundreds of people over a period of time, no takers. It's never seemed to be an issue that having money available is a reason why there's a problem as an empty home. And in reality, we have 1 or 2 cases a year that come forward where there's an empty house that's causing a problem for some reason. And either we deal with that through planning, there's a target notice, more often than not in environmental health. Sometimes it might be a housing issue, because say somebody's gone into supported housing, and then we might actually help them get the house ready to be sold. Because if they haven't got a family member or something, it's usually family circumstances. There's very few number of cases, but we promoted this to death and didn't get any takers, and it's never really taken off the ground in our district. You asked a question about charges. Anytime any work's done on a property or a loan, they all did involve charges on properties, as they do for disabled facilities grants, as they do when we do home repair assistance grants. In response to your question about is it well known that Councillor Osborne, we did, I think every quarter we were writing to empty property owners saying, did you know this is available? Did you know you can even, if you're investing your own money or even a loan, into doing an empty home, you pay a lower rate of VAT. We told them everything we could find out about, and we weren't getting much back. But what really made the difference in this district was the change to council tax policy. If an empty home, and this is about 4 years ago, I think, Tony?
2014.
Yeah, so coming at 5 years ago now, wow, that's gone by quickly. After 2 years of the property being empty, an extra 50% is charged on the council tax. So that is a huge disincentive. If you can't afford that, then you're going to need to get your property back into use. And the other thing that worked wonders, after we did our contracting empty homeowners, and we weren't getting any takers from that, the revenues and benefits team did a really good exercise going through everything that was registered, all the different discounts, all the different exemptions, all the different empty properties, and that actually brought the numbers down quite dramatically, and they've never really risen. That's been a very good exercise. So between us, across the different teams in the council, we've got a well managed arrangement to keep the numbers of empty properties down. Certainly there's not problematic empty properties, 1 or 2 of them a year on average, and we're able to deal with them.
Thank you, Maria. Steve, do you want to come back on that point?
Yeah, I need to make a point. I'm sure there was a time, going back a few years, when it was difficult. I'm sure you were around, Maria, then. There was a bulk of homeowners that were difficult to find out who actually owned their house. And that's what we were up against at one time, not only for the rates problem, but also for letting them know about things, problems with their houses. There were people you couldn't find who actually own the places.
Yeah, through you, Chairman, we've got access to record, land registry and all sorts, and we can share data around that, so that may have been a problem
it was a few
years ago, but it's certainly not a problem now. We don't have any problem finding it out.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I suspect that when we move to a unitary authority, this matter will come back on the agenda anyway, because Northampton must have a much greater need for programs, if not a much wider need. And I can remember the days when we had repairs grants. In fact, I got one myself about 3 years ago for the old cottage at Evident. I think it's about £3,300 that I got, because it was semi-derelict when I bought it. But I suspect it will come back on the agenda. So as far as we're operating this, it requires an administration of something which is only being used once. And that's really nonsense. Far better to strike it out now and see what happens when we become a unitary, unified with the other 1 or 2 authorities.
Thank you. So, on to that?
Just very briefly, Chairman, we did talk to our colleagues at Southampton, and Southampton obviously aware of the potential for change. Neither of them are offering these loans at present, so by taking them out, again, we're bringing ourselves in line with the policy in our respective unitary partners. That's not to say that the unitary in the future may not do, or who knows what it chooses to do, but at the moment, that's what we are.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Randall?
Yeah, we're just actually having a quick look to see how easy it was to find any information on the website, but we can find absolutely nothing. So if anybody was going on the website to see if we did anything like that, you just can't find anything. So I'll be interested to know what you actually look under. Because, as us being councillors, if we don't know, I'm sure the general public are going to have trouble finding their way around it.
Really?
I can't answer that right now.
I can't find it on the website, so if it's not on the website, nobody's going to take it.
Thanks, Councillor. Any comment further, Councillor?
Yeah, I think that's a good point about how visible are these loans. But as you've heard testimony, that actually there has been a lot of efforts put by this council. The other issue is if somebody really does have an issue, they will just pick up the phone and phone the council. That is sorry?
How would you pick up the phone if you've got no idea they do that?
How do you pick up the phone? Well,
no. If you've got no idea that a council does anything like that, why on earth would you?
Why were you looking at the council? Well, I get the debate. Why do you look at the council site in the first place if you didn't think they might?
Most people don't.
Well, okay, well. That's a separate issue. Okay, so if
Got two recommendations.
Two recommendations. One, that the provision of the housing assistance policy be amended to remove the provision for these loans for empty houses to be brought back into use. And secondly, that the strategic housing plan and its action plan be amended.
Thank you. Are you happy to agree that?
Yeah.
Any against? Two against? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor. We'll move on to strategic planning issues. Self-enforcement, Councillor Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will be well aware that this council decided to introduce the community infrastructure levy a few years ago, having been given that opportunity. And the regulations under which the levy is introduced include the provision for surcharges in the event of non-payment. At the moment, our arrangements for pursuing such non-payment and imposing surcharges are not very well defined, and the purpose of this recommendation to Council Chairman is simply to tidy that up. If somebody fails to provide the information or make the payments when they're required to, they can have a surcharge added to their liability. But it's not 100% clear in the documentation as to whose responsibility it is to pursue that and whether or not that requires full council approval all the time. So what I'm asking here is for support for a recommendation that, two recommendations, Chairman. One is that authority is granted to the Executive Director of Community to determine and exercise all the enforcement provisions in the legislation governing SIL, including the levying of surcharges, and that the default position is that the Council will levy and seek to collect surcharges. There have been suggestions that we don't really do that. The other comment to make from the report that I'm sure you've all read is that this may be regarded as a new policy which would normally require community engagement according to our strategy. However, this is focused on the way the council actually does what it has to do, and it's so we're considering that it's a matter for council itself rather than going out to consultation. So those are the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. I've got Councillor Osborne.
Fully support them, Chairman, and about time too. Majority of people do pay it and do it properly, but there are a few people, mostly smaller people, that know how to fiddle it or get on the very edge of not paying.
In terms of size or just not?
No, generally get out of paying it.
Okay, thank you.
And the sooner we've got a policy of chasing those kind of people, the better.
Thank you,
so,
Councillor.
yeah, great.
Thank you, Councillor Randall.
Yeah, I just wondered why it was a particular person it's granted to, rather than just, it's just written in this council policy, this is what happens.
Sorry?
Chairman, it's simply because when we're doing a delegation of any authority, it has to be delegated to somebody in particular. It might be to a committee, doing a delegation like planning committee, instead of planning applications, or it's more commonly to an officer, and so you have to designate the development officer. Simple as that.
Senior officer as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Very simply, as I support this as well as does Councillor Osborne, as you'd expect in my resources portfolio position, it's very positive.
Thank you, Steve. We've got, everyone happy? Can we agree the two recommendations?
Agreed.
Any again? That's agreed. Thank you. The second one, Councillor Chandler's Harbour Local Plan 2011-2031, name modifications.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members will be aware that Harbour District borders our district in the remoter parts, and that the Harbour District Local Plan was examined and main modifications were suggested. At the time of that examination, we did formally object to one of the policies which we thought was not adequately based. That was a policy for the expansion of Magna Park. There was not sufficient evidence presented as to justify the size of the expansion that was included in their draft plan. The major modifications that they have made to the plan as a result of that examination still, in our view, is excessive in terms of the allocation for Magna Park, and the evidence is still lacking. So at this stage of the process, all we're allowed to do is make a comment about the proposed modification. And this is a resolved item, Chairman, that a formal objection to the proposed modification is made as outlined in the report.
On the 4.6?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor James?
Yes, I'm quite worried about this actually, because not only of its effect on but also its environmental effects as well on say, small settlements like Bittersworth, for example, which is to the north of Magna Park. And I'm very surprised that they're actually expanding Magna Park. I'd be up in arms if I lived up there. It's a very nice part of the countryside.
The local representatives might go, I don't know.
Yes.
You know,
I don't know.
Certainly I was quite angry when I read about this. Now,
good man, Councillor James. Yeah, and brothers. Well done. Yeah. Right, is that okay? Be happy to agree resolved item.
Agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chandler.
Chairman?
Sorry, Councillor.
Can we, before we go to the next item, I received one of these discretionary business rate grants, so I better declare an interest.
I think that's noted. Thank you.
So I shan't be voting or talking on it, okay?
Yes, okay, thank you. Right, moving on to item then. Resources issues, revisions to discretionary rate relief guidelines. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Osborne. Yes, I can see on page 80 his business may be mentioned, of course. First of all, I'd like to say before I kick off, I have 4 items come in to say that myself and Audra were invited to Scrutiny Improvement Committee on Tuesday evening, and it's a good opportunity to give a presentation with some high-level numbers in, etc. And I think it was very useful exercise, well received. Very much for me, actually, gamekeeper turned preacher, actually, on that occasion. And Councillor Ritchie in particular asked some very good questions. Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Some of those that are almost beyond my ability to answer because they're about local government reorganisation. So thank you again for that opportunity, Councillor Brown. This first item is related to the discretionary rate relief guidelines. Members will know back in October, the government announced the support for high streets, basically, and retail and service businesses operating in the high street to provide a relief to those businesses. And what this paper does is it actually refers you to our policy document, which basically outlines in Appendix 1 the introduction of this particular relief. The good thing about this, actually, which I'm asking you to support, is the retail relief doesn't cost us any money directly at the district council level, but does support those qualifying businesses. And looking around the room, I can also see that there'll be other people in here who also benefit from that, not members necessarily, but members of the public as well, and hopefully that will support those businesses too. It's, to use the phrase, it's perhaps a no-brainer for us to support this and help these retail businesses and services businesses across our community. A couple of things to note: there'll be the qualifying benefit is up to circa £376,000. We do get our money back from the government. And there's this tricky word which I'm not sure if everybody's seen before, which I hope I pronounced correctly, hereditaments, yes. Which are outlined there, those qualifying businesses.
What's the definition of that,
sorry?
The definition of hereditaments?
I must confess, I've never really become incredibly familiar with this term, and I even had to ask guidance on pronunciation, so I do apologise, but basically those qualifying businesses are listed on pages 80 to 81. We've noted there are 149 qualifying businesses. Some businesses won't necessarily apply because they'll breach the European Union rules, which, as you can see, apply for one is £200,000. Some of the large businesses may not seem to apply, but We think it's very good for the businesses and it's helpful for them. Finally, one final note on the document itself. It actually says November 2018. With the adoption, that'll be updated to February 2019. Finally, from page 89 onwards is the Ministry of Housing Community and Local Government guidance document, which is really for reference purposes and forms the basis of our paper update. And that's all, Chair, unless there's any questions.
Very much indeed, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Brown, your stringent improvement committee was mentioned there.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'd like to reciprocate the thanks that Councillor Morgan passed to me. It was a fantastic presentation by him and by Roger, who was extremely helpful to the committee, and I think all the committee members found it very illuminating. So thank you to both of them. Just on this particular issue, I had a brief exchange of emails with Tony earlier, which was extremely helpful. Fully in support of helping small businesses and helping our high street to thrive whenever possible. My only regret with this is that we don't have more flexibility to target specific businesses. We've already had Harbour mentioned earlier this evening. I think many of us turn an envious eye to Market Harbour and the diversity and the success of its high street. In an ideal world, I'd like to take out certain categories of business that we have a plethora of, particularly in Daventry Town Centre, and target the rate relief to businesses that we lack. But I'm reliably informed that we don't have the flexibility to take such an approach. So I'll give the motion my support, but I think it's probably one to raise with our Member of Parliament to see if he cannot try and put some pressure on the right people to come up with a policy that would actually give local government an awful lot of power to try and help its own high streets with the local knowledge that they inevitably have.
Just send a letter to our Member of Parliament about this.
Chair, there's no harm in doing so. To take the point, actually, we often talk about Market Harbour in various meetings and so on. They do have a very good ability there to build units very quickly as well. In fact, we were there recently, and it's amazing how quickly a business disappears and not long takes its place, and again, some very high level retailers. I think if that's something we can do, we're very happy to support that.
No, absolutely, to the edge of the office on that point. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions to Councillor Hill?
Not exactly a question, but something that stood out when I went through this. On page 83, item 1.1, from my portfolio point of view, the local authority which collect business rates must grant a rate relief, 80% known as mandatory relief, to all properties which are liable to pay business rates and are occupied by other registered charities, community amateur sports clubs. And I think that's very, very helpful to our sports clubs that aren't professional. Our charitable organisations, otherwise exempt from registering as charities. So I fully support it, and I say that comment was one of the things that I went through that I got very happy with.
Thanks, Councillor Hill. Tony?
Yes, I think if I can just clarify for Councillor benefit and others, the addition to the scheme is actually from on page 87 onwards. In fact, so it's points 3.6 and 3.9. The point that Councillor Hill makes is part of our scheme already.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. You're just reinforcing what's already done. Thank you. Okay, so we have to set the recommendations. Thank you. And the second one, Councillor Morgan, is programme of asset disposals. And you can go back in sync now, Councillor, I'll call back in action.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our periodic asset disposals recommendations. And what I will do is I will first quickly walk through the recommendations and take through a couple of items. The first one is for the disposal of land identified in table 1 of the report, 12 months from the date of the council meeting. The disposal of the Cadet Centre below market value as set out in section 4.3. Long leasehold disposal of the ground floor of the Abbey below market rent as set out in section 4.4 of the report. And long sub-leasehold disposal of land premises at Western Avenue, Daventry, below market rent set out in section 4.5. So the first thing to note here really is that there should be nothing new actually in here for members to see this evening. Because we've worked through the programme and discussed it at previous meetings. The first one I'd like to turn our attention to is the the Cadet Centre at Waterloo. Again, we've discussed this previously about the 341,000 of which we sold for the Cadet Centre, and actually because of the change in our plans, looking for the opportunity for them to repurchase the Cadet Centre. However, as you can see in the second paragraph in 4.3 on page 105, there has been very slow progress, I think is the best word there, on this particular matter. And I'm going to very briefly ask Simon Bowers if he's got an update on this particular point, because we use the term not resolved in the near future, some clarity on where we are with that, if where possible.
Chairman, we were at the point of serving a notice to bring the lease to an end. They're currently what's called holding over. The lease is essentially running term and it's sort of ticking on as though the lease was there. However, the surveyor looking at it, who is new to us, concluded we might be able to apply the existing provisions of that lease to require repurchase, which would simplify the process. So we're taking legal advice on that. And as things stand, unless the Cadet organisation decides to cooperate, we will serve that purchase notice if we're able to. If we can't, we'll serve a notice to bring the lease to an end. We believe that will be sufficient to bring them to the table to complete a repurchase.
Thank you, Simon. And the possibility there is, of course, that if it was sold to anybody else, it could go at the market price.
Absolutely.
So it could be a benefit to us, but of course, as the Cadet organisation. The next item I'd like to raise is the grant for leasehold disposal of the Abbey. Here, of course, it's regarding the library, and because of the move from the current location. You can see already the work is underway, but of course this does have a potential impact in terms of potentially lost revenue in terms of renting out the space. In the same vein, I'd like to also point out 4.5, which is the Stephen Hill Sports Park for Reach for Health. Obviously, we've got an item later on in the agenda for Reach for Health, correct. But and obviously we discussed this at length at previous structure group and full council. At those particular meetings, I spoke about what was actually, in one respect, a conflicting position, because I was in principle in support of it, but obviously the financial elements of it were particularly challenging at the time. But here, of course, I'd like to raise the point, because the way the proposed structure for the rental is considered, there is potentially a lost income here for the District Council of up to £2.6 million for the 29 years. So when we're having that consideration, we need to take that into account. And also because the way it's currently structured, they would have a peppercorn rent for the whole lifetime. And perhaps later on we could be minded to consider, but at some point there'll be a rent review which could be upwards, which could be built in perhaps after 5 years. So I'd like to put it into members' minds about that particular issue. And the final element is really around the table in 4.2, just jumping back a little bit. Again, those are reflected in here anyway, and there's nothing to with that, happy to take any questions, or I'd ask you to recommend it on that basis.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Organ.
Yeah, just with regard to the cadets, you talk about the cadet organisation. Is that separate from the MOD, or is it the same organisation?
Chairman, I ask Simon to give the exact status of the cadet organisation of the Simon.
Chairman, it's known as the East Midlands Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, I believe it is correct title. We tend to use the short version, it's rather cumbersome. But it is part of the MOD, and indeed the original reason we had to get a legal involvement to purchase the site was because it counts as Crown land, or it counts as Crown land, and therefore wasn't susceptible to compulsory purchase. So effectively it's part of the MOD.
Right. But we're still having problems with them as an organisation responding. It seems, or is that the MOD for you?
I think to be fair, we've had very little dealings professionally with the MOD, not least because there aren't many military facilities in this district, so I won't comment on the MOD's efficiency generally. All I can comment on is the organisation of the part of the MOD we're currently dealing with.
Thanks, Councillor Organ. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I've got a few questions. The first one on the cadet centre. I just wondered that if they didn't decide to repurchase it and we decided to put it on the open market, why it couldn't just go on a rolling month-by-month contract? Because thinking back to like Daventry Garage, the vineyard was moved up, given another location, it was knocked down, still stood empty. They could have just been in there, never having to move. So that was the first question. On the second question, which was on the library, I just wondered why they would be given a peppercorn rent without any rent review for 84 years. I know the 84 years will be the end of the lease as it is on its present site, but is that without rent review now? Is that just mirroring it, or is that something that we're bringing in? And the other question was on Reach for Health. Now it does say that market rent would be 89,500, and obviously we're going to do it on the peppercorn rent, but all these peppercorn rents seem to differ so much, and I just wondered if it was a real cheap peppercorn rent, why we were doing a full repair and insuring lease for 29 years.
Thank you, Wendy. Shall I put us aside, Baz?
Yes, Chair, you can, but before you do actually, I wanted to say an item on the cadets, and that is, I seem to recall actually, even as we began to embark on this, we felt there may be a challenge. I think, as I understand the situation, if the tenant is unresponsive, then, it strikes me as very odd anyway, given that we're looking to go back at the original transaction value, they wouldn't be responsive for that. And therefore, I think we have a duty to be able to capture the maximum market value for that location. The second one, in terms of the library and Reach for Health in terms of different peppercorn rents. And actually, the wider point about the library, I know we're actually focused on business as usual for the District Council, but I suppose at some point in the coming years there may be a situation because we're all one unitary authority anyway, and perhaps these things will be looked at. But other than that, perhaps Simon can fill in the...
I think if I may, Chair, in terms of the cadet centre, I'm not entirely sure I follow the suggestion, but I think if someone, their organisation, offered to rent it at its market rent, that's something the council will seriously consider. It's very likely at the moment they're simply sitting in a building and paying nothing for it, and they're quite like that. Who wouldn't? But there comes to a point where we need to say, oh, this needs to come to an end, and that's what it's about. In terms of the space for the library in the Abbey, there's two reasons why the proposal is what it is. One is that's what Council decided last December, I think it was, and again, building on the decision in July, so we're simply reflecting what Council already decided. The other is a purely practical one. There is no way on earth that the County Council will agree to anything any less favourable to than that. And therefore, if the City Council is to proceed with its plans from in place, it needs to agree to this. In terms of Stephen Hill, I think the question was why are the rents different, the assessed rents, and that's because of the amount of space and the uses one could put it to, as assessed by professional surveyors. The retail building I think is bigger. The rental per square foot is something lower, but it works out mathematically for those ounces. But a peppercorn means we're not charging them at all. Those are just numbers that say what it would be if we were to charge what the market would bear in each of those locations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. Question really. Table 1, item 6, Monksmoor Primary School. The last conversation I had with the chair of the governing body, they were still arguing that they wanted a freehold and not a leasehold arrangement. Does this mean that they've now agreed to the leasehold arrangement?
Chair, I might for Simon to answer that one, actually. That's probably quite a lot, but...
Chairman, we've had, I don't think, no definitive expression of a view from the diocese. They know that our lawyers are preparing a lease, a revised lease, and then to look at that, I think our preparation is been slower than I would like, and so we've granted an extended licence while this has been going on, but the lease should be with them soon, and only then we'll find out what the reaction is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Councillor Guildford?
Just back to the cadet centre, because I think, yes, we've got the negativity that we'll have to serve on that, etc., but there is the positive comment that, we're offering them at the same price we bought it. Whoever their business manager is and hasn't taken this offer up, I don't know. If they need someone to loan them money though, and they buy it and sell it, were you putting a clause in, if that was the case, to prevent them doing a quick profit?
Simon?
Before Simon speaks, I find it astonishing actually that you could have that in there and offer them the facility back at the value then, and then they'd be unresponsive. But it's a very good question actually, about clauses. I mean, I do find it astonishing, and actually we need to move on. Yeah, absolutely.
I think there are two questions there, Chairman.
Yes.
The first one, do they need to borrow money? No, the money that we pay them is sitting with their solicitor and has done throughout the period. So the money is available to pay them back. I think the solicitor is quite happy about that situation. Nobody else is. In terms of are we planning to put some kind of restriction on the resale, no, that's not the intention to extent. We took this to council substantively just over a year ago now. And the argument then was, effectively, we applied political pressure on them to sell us it in the first place in order that we could carry out town centre development. That has not proven to be necessary or appropriate, and so it felt right to sort of unwind the situation to what it was before we purchased, and members at the time pretended that was the right approach ethically. And I think that's probably a reasonable position for you to take. Clearly, you could take a different position, but it seemed reasonable to me.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Simon. Councillor, do you want to come back on that point?
Yeah, Chairman, I was going to say, it's one of those unfortunate situations where if it's resolved in such a way that they do depart, then of course it'll have an impact on the users, and Daventry District Council potentially suffers a reputational damage, even though in actual fact we've done, as I understand it, our best to actually offer them this opportunity.
Good point, thank you. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. My first is on item 1. Am I right in understanding that at the moment that Henry Boot, do you have an agreement with Henry Boot, but that agreement no doubt has got a provision whereby it's triggered that we provide Henry Boot with a lease? Henry Boot does not have a lease at the moment?
Chairman, that is correct. At the moment there is a development agreement which the council could terminate on, I think it's 3 months' notice. Where we get is at the moment, if Boots would call the leases at the moment, having met the triggers, they could do so. In fact, as you'll know, because the council agreed it last summer, I think it was, we're in the process of tidying up the arrangement of Boots and hope to enter into the leases in the next few weeks.
Thank you. That is one of my questions. I don't wish to divert the discussion from asset sales, but obviously there's a concern that if it's with Henry Boot sat in other property for a long number of years without anything happening, and clearly if something is going to happen here, we can't wait very long. My second question, however, is on item 2. I'd be interested to know where I can find out something about, and I quote, the council's design ambitions for the site. I thought that the council's design ambitions for the site were all washed out with the canal. It says no actual disposals are considered likely, but this is included in case one is strategically advantageous. How would we recognise a proposal for this site that was strategically advantageous? I'm just trying to think what it is that if you produced a marketing leaflet for this site, what would you put on it?
Chair, I think this, even though it's a resources issue, I think it's best deferred in terms of the actual question. So maybe either Simon could pick it up, or even
Councillor James, want to say that?
Yes, the question is prepared a list of projects for possible disposal over the next 12 months. Now, they may or may not be disposed of. Let's say, for example, a proposal comes forward for Town Centre Vision Site 3 from any developer of services, and it's attractive in terms of the in terms of either monetary or social value to the council, then it would be very silly to turn it down and say, well, we haven't got permission to do that. You know, it's not in our list of disposals. We have to always be aware of the possibilities of something happening. Let's face it, it is a prime site in Daventry. It does have enormous potential down there. The plans that we did have for it were effectively abandoned because of the giving up the canal project. But that's not to say that something might not happen there, and it may happen very quickly. And it might be to the advantage of Daventry District Council, while it's still Daventry District Council, to do something about it. That's how I see it.
Thanks, Steve. Any comments on that, Simon? That's fine. Thanks, Steve, David. We've got Councillor Randall.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say now.
Okay, thank you. We've got 4 recommendations there. Are you happy to agree them all? Agree. Thank you. Thank you, Colin Morgan. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Morgan, your third one. Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2019-20.
Thank you, Chair. This, in respect of policy, there is, in terms of policy content, there's nothing new in this document.
Okay.
So what we're doing here is looking for recommending that the Council's Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2019-2020 be approved. It's really the layout of the documents, etc., and the themes. We actually touch upon some of those a bit later anyway. The capital strategy we put more in the next document, the budget reports. But here really it's looking at an updated layout and approach in accordance with the new SIP guidelines. And really just it's really about ensuring the amount of funds and having security and the investment in our assets which needs to be set out. I don't think there's anything necessarily in particular to bring to your attention. We cover some of those elements in the next paper.
That's right.
But really looking for your support for this particular document in accordance with those.
That's a great idea. Thanks, Steve. Councillor Morgan. Any comments or observations, or do we just go and agree that recommendation? Agreed. Good. Councillor Morgan, it's the 4th and final item, 2019-20 Capital and Revenue Budget Medium-Term Financial Plan.
Thank you, Chair. This is one that would always generate a little bit more interest than the previous one. It's about 17,000 pages long from start to finish, this particular item. There's a couple of things I'd like to draw your attention to. First of all, I'll go through the recommendations. That the 2019-2020 revenue budget proposals be approved relating to the General Fund revenue budget and Special Expenses revenue budget. The revised CIL programme set in Appendix 4 is approved. Obviously, we had a conversation on it earlier as well. The draft proposals to program as detailed in Section 8 and Appendix 5 of the report be approved. That the use of £37,000 Section 106 funding from DA 20140218 is approved for the West Haddon Junior Football Club toilet block, and that the capital strategy as set out in Appendix 6 be improved. I'll just take number 6 first, actually. This is the larger document at the back, which really sets out in quite some detail approach. It's quite a lengthy document there, 42 pages. It's a very comprehensive document. I'm sure all of those that have had papers for some time have read it already. You can take any questions on it in due course, but it's, I think, very well laid out, very comprehensive. gives a very good approach to reporting, our approach, etc. There's one very interesting point I'd like to point out. Page 182, you'll notice a table there in 7.9. And it talks about the value of our property group assets, having a value of £29 million and a forecast income for the current year of £2.47 million. We actually, I'm going to refer to that again shortly in terms of some expenditure, but I wanted to draw your attention to that because it's quite an interesting page. And obviously it talks about the assets that we have that we generate an income from, which is very useful in terms of making a positive contribution to our service delivery, etc. So that's number 6. But I want you to look here. Really, this document does many things really. So I'm going to talk to you about it in a little bit more detail. So on page 128, the medium-term financial plan. We do this at every time we update on this. We first of all present the table as it was at the previous full council. So you can see here the plan as it was. Then we actually walk through any changes, any particularly significant changes that need to be taken into account. There's something I'll draw your attention to in settlement funding. So in 4.2 section A, you can see that the settlement for the council is brought in on the multi-year settlements that we signed up to and expected. However, there was a small, it was extra £139,000 in increase of what we were expecting there. But it's obviously a good positive thing. But members need to be aware that going forward there is a risk of a 5% per annum decrease in those numbers, which we talk about a bit later when we see that reflected. In section B there's the non-domestic business rates, and really the main point I want to draw your attention to there is 4.10 at the bottom of page 129, which talks about the 75% business rates pilot. And at the top of page 130 it actually says that additional money is generated by this, approximately expected to be £17 million, will be used to support the transitional costs for the local government reorganisation.
Across the whole county.
Across the whole county, thank you, Chair. So worth noting. And of course we can't guarantee how that number will look in the future. C, new homes bonus on page 130. Again, this particular scheme has been changed in the past, and it does bring a benefit to the district. In fact, actually, as you also pointed out in scrutiny on Tuesday, there is a significant contribution from this in terms of our operating monies. The new homes bonus, of course, is also potentially could be a risk in future as well. So there are some numbers there actually as we go through those, which could have a material impact on us in future years. A couple of things to report in terms of revenue growth bids. A bit later on in the paper this evening we'll be talking about sports facilities investments to the tune of £75,000, which we'll discuss a bit later on. And also in terms of forthcoming actually, but we still need to make a note of it here, is the annual review of member allowances. There is a small incorrect note in the paper. It says actually in annual review of member allowances it's £13,000, well 0.013 million. It should be in 18-19 and not 19-20 as noted in the papers. So please take that into account, but this will be dealt with separately. You heard me reference earlier the Appendix 6 of the paper where we spoke about the assets that we have in the District Council and the 2.47 million income derived from this stock. The stock condition survey you can see there, which is requesting £150,000 investment, is basically to make sure we have really do detailed analysis of the assets there and make sure they're generating what we'd expect. At the page 132, it gives you a little section that says this update is necessary because the length of time that's passed since the existing plan was adopted, the need to update policies. So that policy there really gives you the reason why we need to spend £150,000 to protect that income. A couple of other items there. There's one about the new industrial unit at Harlands, and there's obviously a negative impact there, but there may be some good news on the horizon about 10. I actually drove past that earlier, actually, and you can see it's looking better than it was, but obviously officers can keep going on sunlight if needed. And we also have in page 133F the environmental services contract, which has actually been favourable to us to the tune of £360,000. And I think actually I hope members will see in Councillor Guildford's portfolio this one that there have been many successes from the Norse programme. And I personally, as I've wandered around parts of the town, I've actually seen them in action quite a bit actually. They're up on Middlemore this morning by the Hartlands development there, actually tackling some quite severe rubbish area, and I actually stopped to congratulate them on their work. So they're doing a super job. Not only they're doing a super job, but also we're having some better favourable variances as well. There's a section now on local government reorganisation. The whole of this MT medium-term financial plan is always prepared in business as usual terms, but we talked there again about the 17 million from business rates retention scheme, transition funding. Finally, a couple of things in terms of before we get to the updated plan. There's the annual council tax increase, and members will know obviously the council tax, which goes out to the public, actually has many parts to it. And the section for Daventry District Council for the based on Band D is going to be £4.23 increase, with a balance of 67p being made up of the special expenses. In addition to that, of course, people and the members would have heard that the county council have the ability to charge higher now without having a referendum. And of course, county members here will be very familiar with that. These plus parishes, or in the case of the town, the precept from the town, would obviously increase the public's council tax bills. But we've, as always, absolutely strived to keep it within that limit. Members will also, particularly town ward members, that we had what perhaps is best described as a spike in special expenses last year for members probably in the town. And of course, that was partly due to many things, particularly as we said at the time, the Norse contract, but very much hoping that particularly town members can actually see that there has been significant value delivered by that. I'd now like to take you to the next significant table on page 5.4, on page 136, sorry, and that is the updated general fund table after we've taken into account some of the narrative which I've spoken about, and some interesting points here to note. So particularly if you look at the budget deficit stroke surplus for the year line, so that's the fourth line down, you can see in the year it comes to a surplus of 2.755 millions, which is better than we originally projected back in December. But you can see that for next year, 1920, that it's 0.642 surplus for the year, which is not as good as we projected. But actually, what I'd very much like to draw your attention to is the rising rapid deficit increases as we go throughout the cycle. So I said to you that in the last meeting that we now updated the table, so it takes into account 23-24. And whilst these numbers for the deficit are marginally better than we predicted before projected, we still end up in a 23-24 position of over £4 million deficit for the local authority. Now, members may well be thinking at this point in time, what the hell, we're going to be a unitary anyway. but we are required to basically have the medium-term financial plan based on our business as usual projections and not that as if we're going into a unitary. And we have obviously a duty to deliver services for our taxpayers comfortably without moving into a deficit situation. So the deficit situation that we're projecting here begins the year after next. And that's drawn out in the table. So you can see the numbers moving from bracketed to non-bracketed. And you may well be asking yourself why this situation is arising. I spoke about a couple of those earlier, but the main reason is because of the drop in the business rates, the reset there, which is the main potential problem causing us a loss of income. Finally, I think I'd spoken about some of the other things, so I've touched upon Daventry special expenses, the capital programme which we spoke about earlier. Let's have a look, see if there's some there to draw your attention to in particular. We've spoken about the new rehabilitation building, we're going to be talking about that later. And a couple of points on page 141 to want to draw your attention to, that is site 1, the cinema. We're looking within this paper to accelerate the investment there of £300,000 in this year to get the project moving even faster, particularly as we are in the future potentially constrained by capacity because of the unitary, and also the Abbey refurbishment actually proposing the acceleration of the investment there by moving £800,000 into this year. And members will have seen already that work has already commenced, and in simplistic terms you could argue that as soon as we get the library moved, that's one less thing to do in terms of getting the cinema. Really, in terms of the capital strategy, which is on page 143.9, it's really about common sense coming all together and making sure we have control of the investments. In terms of summing up, the conclusion is that we still have business as usual for the council. We are, I think it's fair to say, always prudent and well run. But we still need to be very careful about going to the future. Of course, the whole unitary thing is not yet done and dusted. There is potential slippage in the timetable, as I spoke about at scrutiny the other night. And we very much, as it says in 11.5, still very much have to focus on the going concern concept. And there is a risk at the moment of handing over to the new potential unitary, if it should come, a deficit situation. So we must be aware of this as we think about our commitments as we go through our evening. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Brilliant. I just want to pick up on so page 130.
Yep.
I'm actually going to take you to page 134, and it's with regards to the business rate retention hire and the 17 million. Obviously, I've put in this report for members the proposal on how we think it should be used, but that has yet to be agreed across all of the district, boroughs and the county. So there's an assumption in there that that's what it will be used for, but a protocol has yet to be agreed.
That's absolutely right, but all the councils in principle have agreed to that, in principle. So that's all. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right, we've got some people waiting to speak. One is Councillor Gilbert.
Well, I do have to draw your attention. Thank you for highlighting it on the environmental services contract. And that has been a win-win all round. And it's through good management, you know, the officers doing the project. So we've got not only the financial benefit, we've got the recycling rate that's gone to 57%. But for example, the green waste, where we thought there was a risk, maybe you can help me here, but we're up to, I know, 21,500 properties take up, but we originally only budgeted for, is it 14,500, 15?
Chairman, unfortunately my memory and the chief line officers agree with 16,500.
16,500, yeah.
45%.
So, you know, But that just shows you how at Daventry we are prudent and we do our budgets. But going forward, I'm sure there's other projects where, you know, we could have such a good uptake that will reduce any deficit going forward. And I know you've raised the deficit going forward as 23-24. Well, there's appropriate time before you get there. Yes, we'll be unitary, but to take action. So maybe, you know, we can. I hear what you're saying about the unitary position, but with the services this year and the projects we're doing, I do not think it's a big risk.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, Chair, just a little thing. District law on page 132.
No.
I'm aware that in the year 1819, planning services, because we have a solicitor come along to planning and they do all the legal stuff and appeals and stuff. I'm aware that we used a locum for the whole of that year, and that locum has been replaced with a permanent member of staff for the year 1920.
Right.
So what services in the council are still being used by a locum, or are being increased? What services are being increased by the use of a locum that never used to be? Because I would have thought with planning being reduced to a permanent one, how are we paying more?
Sorry, can you answer that?
The question is about more generally across the council, as district law.
Yeah.
We haven't got that many locums as such. There are agencies and business teams, for example, two now. But in terms of district law, which is this focus, there have been locums in other areas, including on property as well as planning.
Yeah.
But they have reduced. They've had some recent good news on recruitment. I think it's down to about one, which is now being filled as a locum rather than a permanent employee. But across the council, we don't have that many.
Right. So, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. So I'm aware now that for the next year, it will be the service that planning are receiving will be a lot cheaper because it has a permanent member of staff there.
In district law?
In district law, yes.
They
Not a locum, right? So what other services within the council will be using the costly services of a locum instead of using district law?
It's not.
Or district law supplying the locum.
Supplying a more expensive person.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's property, I think, which is where there's the
property.
gap at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, just very briefly, solicitors, good solicitors are in short supply and high demand,
Right.
and therefore local terms are often not best to recruit them on, and that I think is laying behind district law's problem in getting us the permanent staff we very much want.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Oswald. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, it's sort of keep it simple, stupid for me. And it's a question about the ability to release further funds for our communities. Is it right to say that as we prudently manage our budgets to 23-24, the fact that we have to do that at the moment because of the uncertainty, does it in any way curtail the monies we could release for community projects? There's only a certain amount we can release because we have to be prudent to 23-24. Would that be a true statement?
I'll pick up two comments actually, both Councillor Walker's and Councillor Gilbert. Of course, Councillor Gilbert was previously a resources portfolio holder. My also keep it simple view on this is actually the way the figures are currently projected, particularly because of the risk from some of those income sources. The numbers are plain to see that we do end up in a deficit situation. To respond to Councillor Gilbert, yes, absolutely. There is no request this evening for us to take any action other than to be minded and be cautious. And with my understanding to your question, Councillor, would be we are the council in terms of us members. We can direct the policy, that's the whole point, and request for the money to be spent. And we saw that particularly last time in Reach for Health. And of course, as you know, I had certain views on that in terms of the money side of it, if not the service element to it. And it's for us to basically take those questions on board when we're presented with these figures.
Can I ask a supplementary one then? I accept the importance of prudence. You know, this council has built its reputation upon that. But as certainty comes, as there will come a time when we will definitely be going to unitary, does that allow us to release some monies in the short few months that we have for community projects, or would we still be curtailed in some way? Because then we wouldn't be having to worry about 23-24 when certainty comes in. Does it mean that we would be able to release some funds for communities, even though we may only have 6 months to execute those projects? Does that make any sense?
Councillor, I think it does. So my simplistic view of this would be, whilst the district council may not retire their money here, we will still have services in this footprint to provide to the members of the public, and whilst there may not be Daventry District Council going on council tax bills, there will certainly be another name on those bills, and our members of our public will still have to pay their bills, will still have to provide their services, and we need to be very focused on not passing a legacy of further debt to our public, which really I think is one of the arguments you could say is the risk that we've had with the county council. And in my opinion, as portfolio order, we should maintain our prudence until the very end. And therefore, this 23-24 figure helps to keep us on the straight track. Thank you.
If I can, Chair, there's a couple of points that have been made this evening. If you think of the medium-term financial plan as a picture of the functions and services that this council delivers, so whether we're DDC or whether we're unitary, that is the track that is showing for us to deliver the services that we do today. So if there's a deficit position shown, even when we go to a unitary, that's the cost of running those services, and that unitary will still have that issue of closing that gap. So it doesn't go away in terms of that deficit position. That's the cost of running our services. Now here again, in terms of councillor remarks, in terms of risk, and whether it's too prudent, the fact is that the business rates income, that's not an estimate of mine, that is fact based on current policy. That income will go. This is not me crystal ball gazing, that income will go on the current policy. So that's the driver of the main deficit position. And if we do get a decision on unitary, like I say, these services, the cost of them and the funding that we receive is what will transfer to the new unitary as well. So that gap will be there, and it will be an issue for the new unitary authority.
Thanks, Audrey. We've got a couple of Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got a few actually. And the first one I've got is on page 131, and it's the annual review of member allowances. So to approve 3 new allowances in time being spent on the unitary work. Well, I know I've asked before about the planning committee getting extra allowances because that is a committee that needs the most. You're often in here 2 or 3 hours, plus all the background work you do, and they don't receive any extra money. I believe that, they took this work on. And that's, I'm not happy about them having an annual increase. The second one, environmental services, yeah, it's great, it seems to be working really well, and hats off to their bosses. They've got the same workforce, but actually they're getting so much more out of them. So that's really, really good to see. And then the annual council tax increase. It says on page 134 in the last paragraph, NCC's element could rise by 2.99%. I thought I'd read somewhere that it was possibly going to be 5% now. But just taking it as 2.99%, we could see an increase of £65.66. So that's likely to be more because it's going to be up to 5%. And then going over to 138 on Daventry special expenses budget, it says council tax for Daventry residents would be £65.10p. So I assume that £65.10p would be on top of, an additional to what everybody else on the band D would be on that £65.66. Is that just clarification on that, please?
Okay, thanks, Councillor. I just want to say on the members' allowances, that's a recommendation by the members' allowances committee. Councillor Moore, you want to come back and go to point, sir?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to come back on 2 points of orders. The first one is, as I've seen it on this council, you have to be very careful to talk about an officer, but Audrey's had a very interesting reputation of being prudent, and we have as a council, and I like that. And what a great reputation to have, and I'm very proud we've got that. The second one is, in terms of any gaps appearing deficits, I think we'd all love for something to happen to make those gaps go away. But the reality of it is, and the point of being prudent and planning ahead is, we have to plan as if the gaps are there. And if we have anything to solve the gaps in terms of money that we didn't expect or changes to government policy, then we'd obviously benefit from that. But we need to plan for the worst case scenario. So we picked up that. I'm very proud of the way we operate. In terms of the no allowances, as you said, that's picked up. Basically, we're just setting out that there is room in the budget for it. The point about Norse, I think we've already had that already. The 2.99% of the county council, of course, this was the case when the papers were published, and of course subsequently we know that has changed. But the most important point I'd like to make also is, as well, is as a district council we have done our absolute best to provide those services better than they were when they were with the previous operator, have a good evaluation, kind of ground truth of the contract. But of course we also don't finally yet know the figure for the precepting for the town, for Daventry Town Council. And of course, not only have we got to be careful, but also Daventry Town Council have got to be careful. And of course, that's where council and also can play an influence in helping to keep those bills at a reasonable level for our taxpayers.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Guildford?
Yes, I was just wondering actually, because yes, totally agree, totally respect Order, got a very good reputation, trust her implicitly, how's that? I know we're having this debate about prudency, but times, are challenging, times have changed, and sometimes you have to change your strategy to the changes that are happening around you. What would help me make more of an informed decision would be if we had previous actual outturn positions against previous budget sets. So if it showed always that, we were under, we had a surplus, then that would help me make a more informed decision, or if we've got a deficit, so that we could then at least have an informed, see how much of a prudency level we've done in the past.
Okay, that's a good term, prudency level. Order?
Yeah, I don't know what the accounting term.
No, just order what's going.
Yeah, I've got a few points to pick up. So.
Oh, well, can we do this at the end? I mean, you haven't brought further. Do it at the end.
Yeah, thank you.
We've got some more speakers first, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to confirm, obviously, the County Council's budget was published yesterday. It did include the additional 2% above the 2.99 that central government have allowed us. I think essentially what this mid-term financial plan shows is that whilst we've been very vocal about the fact that moving to a unitary will not be a magic bullet for the county council's problems, nor is it going to be a magic bullet for any financial situation. We're quite clearly chucking in a load of districts and boroughs whose long-term funding position is at severe risk because of policy decisions. In with a county council that has got its own very well publicised problems. And it was interesting to note that in Parliament the other day when they were debating local government funding, there were dissenting voices from across the country, from Conservative members of Parliament, from Nottinghamshire, from Surrey, from Northamptonshire as well, and Andrew Lower. And I think the penny is beginning to drop that whilst local government was probably at the front of the queue for bearing its more than fair share of austerity to help, it seems to have been at the back of the queue when it comes to benefiting from the upturn in the economy. And I think more and more people of whatever political colour they are beginning to realise that actually local government funding needs a really fresh pair of eyes in government, and it needs to be taken extremely seriously, because the current position is untenable, no matter whether you're a poorly run council or an extremely well run council, as we have been. We're still seeing ourselves slipping into in the context of our budget, a quite serious deficit position in 5 years' time or so, and that is only going to change with help from central government.
Well said. Councillor Richard?
Thank you, Chair. There are 4 issues that I'd just like to ask about, quickly. I mean, the first is the heartlands. Now, my understanding is that the building was constructed almost tailor-made for a particular occupant that now no longer wants it. Does that mean that we entered into a contract where there was actually no comeback whatsoever if the tenant decided that no, they would prefer to go somewhere else? I've been interested in just what the position is, how we were covered, or whether this was a rather reckless speculation that has gone wrong. There's suggestion that perhaps the reason that the tenant went elsewhere because there were delays in completion of the building. I would be interested in knowing just a little bit more about whose fault that was.
Because I said that point first, actually.
Can I Chair? The agreement with the pre-let tenant was that they would be provided with a building in late July last year. The building is more than 6 months late and is not, as we sit here tonight, received a completion certificate from our professional team. It has been a shocking failure of delivery on behalf of the contractor, and indeed one of the key subcontractors. We have expressed our deep dissatisfaction, as you may expect, and they've only put damage running at a rate of £488 a day, but at least the building is getting cheaper if nothing else. There are definitely lessons to learn from this, but what I should say is because it had gone more than 6 months beyond the due date, the tenant became entitled to walk away at that point, and they have indeed 7 months to do so. So, as things stand, we have lost that tenant, albeit come on to what we may do, and that is pretty much entirely down to a really shocking example of construction management. The council, I think, has done everything we could to achieve delivery of the building on time, but UK law does not allow us to apply penal rates to contractors, only to penalise a reasonable pre-estimate of our loss, which is what £488 a day is. So we've gone as far as we can in that respect. We will be taking a pretty thorough lessons learned exercise after this is completed to see what we could have done better and where we can learn for the future. We, prospective unit for it, but nonetheless the point is still there. The good news is that we had a further viewing today, and I'm waiting for a response tomorrow, but we think we may actually have let the property. We have 2 competing offers parts of it at the moment. So, although it's deeply frustrating to be in this position, I think in practice it is likely we'll be out of it rather more quickly than all I thought at the time this was being put together.
Second point.
Second point, touched upon by Councillor Randall, the special expenses for Daventry. I think it was Councillor Morgan that suggested that last year they peaked. Last year they rose steeply. It looks as if next year they're going to be even higher. In spite of the fact that people in Daventry will not need to pay for their toilets, it appears that there is going to be an increase. further increase that by a rough calculation would appear to be above the rate of inflation. Can I have some information on why there is such a big increase in the operational management and contractor costs between this year and what is projected for next?
Okay.
I'm looking at page 151.
Yeah, next point after that. That's Richard.
I mean, the next one concerns the broader picture of the medium-term plan. You know, I think this was an issue that we discussed a little bit at the strategy group meeting, the scrutiny group meeting a couple of nights ago. But I suspect we're always in the position where we do not know what our income is going to be the further we project ahead. I just wonder though, how our medium-term plan compares with those of other councils in the, particularly district and borough councils within the county. Are we unique in that we find that we will be in surplus for a couple of years and then we will be in difficulty unless there are changes in the way in which the government provides funding? Or are we actually doing better? How do we compare? Because I think that's going to have a bearing on how we actually look at whether or not there is scope for for making transfers to town or parish councils, other local bodies, so that what has been contributed by residents of Daventry district, as much of it as possible, stays there to benefit the
Okay, we got the point, Councillor Ritchie. Yeah, that's your third one. Fourth one.
I mean, my fourth one, expenditure has been brought forwards this year on the cinema. What happens if it doesn't get planning permission?
Well, don't worry about that. That happens.
We are a recruitment council. I mean, we are the council that I assume, of course, in the interest of abandon the canal. And on the cinema, I appreciate that you need to spend money when you're preparing your plans, and we're in a situation where things have got to.
Are you on the planning committee, Councillor Ritchie?
I am the planning.
Okay, that's fine. It's just an open interest because you raised what happens here. Well, what happens if it gets refused? You said. I just see a member of the planning committee. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter whether I'm in the planning committee or not. And normally we would. Is it normal for the council to plan to spend large amounts of money on projects which do not have planning permission?
Well, you know there's time constraints on that one, Councillor Ritchie. I'm going to let Councillor Osborne ask this question, then we're going to go back to the answers. Okay, Councillor Osborne?
It's a point, actually, Chairman.
Yeah.
I, as a resident of Daventry District, enjoy a level of services from this council. And when it becomes a unitary authority, I want at least the same level of service. And I will expect the unitary to sell itself to perhaps give us some better services. To get the same level of services, nobody else is going to put any more money in besides the money that the district council has in there. Those services are going to cost the same amount as Audrey has said. We can't expect all of a sudden to become one authority and perhaps the county to bug a bit more on theirs to pay for our shortfalls so we can spend all that money now. No, that's not the way it works. I remember years ago there was an argument around in this country where we need our own bomb. And a lot of people said, we don't need a nuclear deterrent, the Americans will look after us. Well, wind forward a few years, as we've gone along, we've got a bloke that wants to build a wall around Mexico with a nuclear bomb, looking after us. Well, no, I'm not into that, Chairman. I'm into wanting some services and some good services when the unitary takes over, and I want them paid for. I don't want everything spent before it goes. Okay?
Thank you. Well, thank you for that, Councillor Osborne, and we'll come back to that point, no doubt. Councillor Howard.
Yeah, I just want clarity on wording, please, and timing clarity on two things. So the first one's on 151, it may be an officer that comes back on this, is page 151, special corporate and democratic core costs. Is that the special expenses we're talking about and the extra special expenses for the town? And my second one is on page 142, and it's regarding the flood measurements. I'm not sure about Highland Drive, but regarding the haystacks, the residents in the haystacks, this will be the third year, come April, the flood time of year starts from now through April and May. Can I have guarantees that they won't get flooded again and that the county council are actually on board with the project? Because if it's not done sooner rather than later, we'll have another case against us for a claim against flooding.
Thank you. And I got Councillor Guilford again.
Just on the planning issue, I'd hate to be in the position that we haven't brought it forward, we've got a planning commission and we haven't got the money. So, you know, there is a flip side there. So I'd rather be, I would say the prudent approach is to bring it forward. We talk about being a prudent council. Regarding Councillor Osborne's comments, again, we need to look at what's happening around us. Yes, we'd all love to keep the services the same and maintain them. We're all going into the unitary, but I would hate to be the only prudent council that goes into that unitary with the good funding and not retained any money to the district, to then find the other partners in the process going in as a different position to us, and we have a reduced service because we're helping to plug the hole. So we need to look at not just inward, we also need to make informed decisions on what's happening around us as well.
I think there's another point about unitaries. There's always this sort of feeling that if we all merge into one, economies of scale will mean that services can be delivered cheaper. And the truth is, of course, we all know in the short term they're going to be more expensive, and over time they may end up cheaper, but no guarantee. Right, we finished the questions now. Councillor Morgan, and then I'll ask Audrey also to contribute on some.
Chair, yes please. I wanted to take stock actually because a lot of questions there. Some I think I can send back to management if that's okay.
Well, Morgan to go first then.
But before we do, I want to give a sort of atmospheric point of view.
Oh, really? That's good.
Thank you. I'm sure there's almost a theory of economics to describe what we're discussing here about short-termism and long-termism. And maybe even members of the public see a rather schizophrenic behaviour going on here. I think you have to take this down from an abstract level really, and that is if there are things that we want to do, then we need to put them forward and say we'll do them. And make a good case for it. But of course we mustn't forget that, and we are operating this weird space where we're saying for the future, 23-24, there's a deficit, but also we're not going to be, and I understand that's a difficult message to manage really. But the point of the matter is we have a capacity constraint as well with our management team because there's only so many things they can deliver. And we said last year there are 3 things we want to deliver, and a couple of those are obviously in here. One was the education, of course we've spoken about it separately, but the 2 things we really want to get done are very much a level of focus for us. And then of course in addition to that, we also welcomed the opportunity to work with Rich for Health as well. So there's only so much we can get done, so let's get real. And I don't want to, a bit like Councillor Osborne, I don't want to sail into a new unitary being the one that's chucking all the money overboard just in case we lose it. I'd rather go in head out high and say we actually did our best to control our costs because of prudence. Actually, as conservatives individually, I think we should be putting that across as well. But if there's any great money-making schemes that support the public, then we should have them. Finally, going back to Councillor Ritchie's point actually, and that is I really enjoyed Councillor Ritchie's questions, and I actually thought the one about, which was also echoed, the one from Councillor Guilford about almost a kind of prudence index. You know, could we go back and spend this huge amount of time looking at how we predicted the future and where we ended up? Because that would give us some kind of prudence index. We could say, well, actually, generally we are quite prudent, therefore these are. But I don't want to get into a situation where we say, look at the past as an indicator for the future, as a stock market thing going on there. But actually say, we can see the numbers, they're moving in the wrong direction, we have to make sure we keep on top of it. Nobody's asking anybody to do anything tonight, just be careful. And with that, I'd like to point the special expenses one back to Audra, and also the councillor Howard one's also back to the member of management of Invest Absolutes.
Can I speak up? It's interesting, Councillor Morgan, because when Councillor Gilbert talked about that, I can't remember ever, over the years I've been having a deficit budget. I can't remember one, as it turned out that way, maybe Audrey can tell me otherwise. At the county council, of course, there's always a deficit budget. So some councils are consistent. I think that's the point Councillor Gilbert was trying to make. You can either consistent like overspend every year, or you consistently underspend every year, because we're prudent. And when you're prudent, of course, you're more likely to underspend. When you're very optimistic, you're more likely to overspend. I think that's the point Councillor Gilbert was trying to get across. Audrey, at any point's not covered. Yes.
Right, I'll try and go through them. You have to remind me of not picked any of them. So just picking up on the council tax annual increase, and I couldn't get from Councillor Randall's question what the first 60-something pounds was, and was it in addition to the £65 on special?
Yeah, what I did was I was just adding up what was in that report. So there was the police and crime commissioner, and I added those together.
Right. So the first thing is obviously, as Councillor Wiggins said, this was put together at the time of the information we knew. So the 2.99 is now proposed at 4.99, which will mean a banding increase of £58.75. And in addition, the Police and Crime Commissioner was given the freedom to do it between £12 and £24, and the proposal there is £24. So that's the increases for each of those. With regards to the special expenses, a couple of things to pick up on there. One of them was the increase in the operational management and contractor costs. I just want to remind members that the new Norse contract last year started in June. So, as we explained then in terms of the increased cost, that was only 10/12 of the actual cost. In 1920, there will be a full year effect of that new service, which is why those increases are so great. The £65.10 is actually only increased by £1.87 from what was there the previous year. That's a 2.96% increase, which, yes, I appreciate is above inflation. But in terms of when the government set out what councils can do within the £5 limit, that in terms of the referendum, the special expenses is taken into account for that as well. And we are within the £5 limit, which it's actually a smaller increase on the Daventry Town Park than it is on the DDC element of the council tax, which is £4.23. So that's the special explained. I'm going to pause there because there are more special.
There's two questions people want to come in.
Sure, let's put that into context actually. The number there is £1.87 on a banding property. That's less than a price of coffee at Costa Coffee. For these
waitress and don't get everyone.
Absolutely.
We do.
Very good point. You probably still need to make a purchase. But we've got to put some context. You add to 15 pence per month or thereabouts.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was really just looking for clarification on the Finance Officer's explanation of the increase, the operational management and contractor costs. I understand that the 521459 only covers 9 months of North's costs, the North contract costs. Is that correct? Whereas it is a full year. Well, the difference between the two is a 10%, a more than 10% increase in the total amount. I wonder if it would be possible for a breakdown of these costs to be circulated to at least all Daventry councillors. These are issues that people will raise with us, and I'm afraid at the moment I don't understand why that increase is so great. If it is the effect of the Norse contract, why should it be such a small given that we're only talking about an extra 3 months that we pay next year compared with this year, why should the increase in that total be over 10%? I'd be grateful if you could do that.
Thank you, Walter.
Happy to do so.
Happy to do so. Okay, thank you for that. Any more, Roger? Moving on?
Yeah, so moving on, with regards to prudency, I'm very slowly beginning to dislike that word a great deal. It's bandied around as if it's just, a sort of gentle smoothing over. And whilst I may be described as prudent, I like to think that from a professional point of view, if we think about looking backwards, and dare I say it, that one of the criticisms levelled at the county council was that members sat there and thought it'll all come good because it has in the past. And just because we've had underspends in the past, I'm hoping that members have been satisfied with the reporting of what those underspends were made up of. And if they were of a one-off nature, it was recognised, or if it was part of the base budget going forward, any underspends that were identified that could be sustained, they were built into the following year's budget. So we could look back, and yes, I'm sure you'll see that there are underspends along the way. That is not a guide for going forward to measure the prudency. We have to look at our base cost, which is what we do each year. We look at the demand-led nature of it, and yes, we have an estimate on the income. So I'd be loath to go back and look and say, just because we've had underspends in previous years, everything will be good going forward.
That's just that point. Okay, Councillor.
I think I'd like to just come back in that I'm not saying looking back. What I'm saying is the level of risk here is what I'm trying to balance out when I'm making the informed decision going forward. So it's not a criticism. It's not a lot of work. I can easily do it myself. I can do it myself, no problem. But it's just to, get that level for myself.
Okay, back to Councillor Guildford. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, it's just really a response to this ship going towards Daventry with cash being chucked out. I think that's quite emotive and unnecessary, because I think there is a feel amongst the members that we want to, as much as we can, invest the monies that we have within the district to the people of the district. Now, we don't want to do that at the expense of putting ourselves in any danger. We definitely don't want that. We almost want the best of both worlds. And that is why we will continually find ways that if it is acceptable and there are ways of releasing monies to the community for community projects, that we should pursue that relentlessly. But, and this is the but at all times keeping ourselves safe and legal. And so I hope nobody is suggesting that those of us on this side of the aisle that actually want to get grants out and get projects done in our community are doing anything reckless. We actually do understand we need to be safe and legal, and from that standpoint, we will then spend any excess.
Thank you for that. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. We need to remind members, actually, we have got an NTFP training session next week.
I went to the last one.
Exactly. So there's a really good opportunity to deconstruct this to our heart's content next week. Conscious we have more to get on the agenda. I think the point is, you can see the numbers, it's been explained why they're dipping away. My comment about a ship saying, it's emotive, of course I'm emotive, I'm a councillor, that's the whole point. We have Audrey to do the dry technical stuff, and I can emote, that's the job. But let's get to that training session next week, and let's wrap up any of these questions. I think there's a couple of outstanding questions to wrap up, but I think the point is, the numbers dip away in the wrong direction, we want to be prudent, Obviously, the buzz driving us crazy. It's better to be that. Nobody on this council, or members anyway, should be kept awake at night because of our money situation, which is a wonderful position to be in. That gives us that luxury to be able to invest it in schemes like we're going to discuss later without having too many concerns. Let's keep that position. But nobody's got any great ideas tonight to say we've got to spend it in a particular direction. So let's go with the recommendations and then move on to the next general items as we can.
Well, councillors are obviously there to represent their communities and to deliver to their communities. So we do have that responsibility as well. It's about getting the balance right. And obviously the technical officers advise us and members at the end of the day take the final decisions. Or do you want to go back on the point?
Yeah, one of the other questions was, are we unique in this position in terms of deficits going forward? I can tell you we are not. In fact, without sort of naming other councils, some of them are already in deficit positions. Where we are unique is that we do have those reserves, and that's where we've always planned, so that if we did need to make wholesale change or things like that, there were no knee-jerk reactions, and those reserves were there in order for us to plan. So for those deficits going forward, 2 points really. We still do not have a decision on unitary, nor will we have a decision by the time full council meets. I strongly suspect we will not have a decision by some council. So yes, but not in terms of the deficits. Yes, we're unique in being in a position to have the funds to manage change and hopefully maintain services at a level that our taxpayers would like to see.
Thank you, Audrey. We have 5 recommendations. Committee, are you happy to accept those recommendations?
Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Howard.
Can I have clarity, please, on page 151, cover 151 officer, the wording on the special budgets, it's GNF 300, special corporate and democratic core costs.
It's page 151, is it?
Yeah. It's on page 151. It's just the wording, because there's a proposed budget now, £35,000. I'd just like to know what that actually means. I've tried to look through the paper and couldn't see it matching.
Special corporate and democratic core costs. Audrey.
Mainly your good selves, members.
Is that? Actually highlighting that, Councillor.
And sorry, the other one was, I'd like an update, I guess it'll be from Simon, regarding the flood measurements. I don't know about Highland Drive, but the haystacks being going to the third year of the cycle.
Chair, as far as the flood relief estimate is concerned, I think you originally asked, could I give an assurance that when the flood is before? No, I can't, because the weather is what it is, and no matter what, there's always some risk of flooding. In terms of the works, those are progressing. I'm afraid I don't know the details of what we are working through, and I'll give you an update separately.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ritchie.
Just clarification. Democratic and core costs, if these refer to district councillors, there are district councillors across the district. Why is that then a special Daventry expense?
Because we manage those services on behalf of that Daventry special expense.
But I don't think there's not a special expense for Barbican either to fund the councils in Barby.
We can arrange that if you want.
But my point is, it doesn't seem any logic as to why Daventry town should be singled out as a place where there are special expenses, because there are district councillors in Daventry town, but there are district councillors everywhere.
That's because we run those services, so it takes a proportion of the overhead costs.
I think, Chair, this might be clearer if once we have been given a full breakdown of what are the component parts of special expenses, so we can see why things are special to Daventry and why some things are not.
Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can understand where Councillor Rich is coming from. I think if I follow his line of argument, you would suggest that every parish would have a special expense district. I think Councillor Ritchie sums up by saying perhaps we can have from Audra the breakdown, which I'd also welcome, of course, as a town member myself, as well as a portfolio there, and then we can perhaps come back with any further questions.
Thanks for that. Councillor Osborne, is that comment?
No, I was just suggesting, I agree.
It's not bad for you actually, we've got to what, half 8?
No, it's okay, Chairman, I'll wait for my 15.
Right, try again. You've got 5 recommendations, committee, are you happy to agree them all?
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. We move on to economic regeneration and employment issues, new rehabilitation building, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I noticed that this particular item is also related, or rather a few papers related to this particular item. If we proceed to discuss just this recommendation here,
2 recommendations.
The 2 recommendations, then obviously no one will be able to mention anything that's in the print paper.
Well, we do that when the press one gets through. And members of the public.
The members of the public have probably come here too.
Well, the point you make is a valuable one, so if we end up having to discuss anything in the print papers, then that's what the meeting has to be suspended from the public and the press, so that we can discuss it afterwards, if that happens. Okay.
Right. Purpose of this report then is to seek approval of the business plan for the construction of the new rehabilitation building to be occupied by Reach for House, which I'll refer to as Reach, not to be confused with the newspaper proprietors, which is important to that name. Anyway, if you remember in December we resolved as a council to fully fund the new building for Reach for Health. This was in spite of the fact that previously, in accordance with opposite recommendations, we were not going to do so. But we did decide finally that we would fully fund the new building for them to occupy. Currently Reach occupies buildings on High March at a subsidised rent, and they'll move from there when this new building is constructed at Stephen Hill. The reasons for doing this on the grounds that it's of great benefit to the district as a whole. It fits our corporate objectives in accordance with our community plan. The intention is that we shall fully fund it, of course, and the only way in which we can work out what that will cost to us is to look at the loss of rent foregone as a result of them occupying it at a peppercorn. And that's estimated, and I can say this figure here, that's estimated on current levels of usage at £2.79 a session for each of their particular clients. Obviously, if business increases, that cost would decrease. There are a number of risks involved in this. It hasn't received planning permission yet, although the planning application is in and should be considered, we think, in February. I think that's referenced DA 2018-0666. That's easy to remember. If anyone likes to look at it. Other than that, I should not comment on the planning situations. I'm a member of the planning committee. The business plan identifies a number of risks, of course. Obtaining planning permission. We hope that that will be favourable. We shall have to see what the planning committee decides in February, later this month. There is a risk of a Section 34 notice being served as a result of us going into a unitary position where there might be restrictions on capital expenditure in excess of £1 million, which this will be. That will create some difficulty. But there we are. Now, options that were considered. First of all, we considered the option of a funding agreement with Reach in conjunction with the Sports Trust. In other words, they would do it, we would fund it. There are risks in that. The council would be unable to control the costs sufficiently, it could get out of hand. The second option was a conventional building that was conventionally procured. This would give a good outcome, but would of course be very expensive, a conventional building, and slow to deliver. And again, that would put in the risk that there may be a Section 24 direction. Third option was a modular building, conventionally procured, which would give a good outcome within the budget, would probably be slow to deliver, again, given the risk of a Section 24. The fourth option was a modular building with non-standard procurement, making use of existing quotations which reach for help at a penny. We think that gives a good outcome within budget and in sufficient time to avoid a Section 24 direction. So we're saying that we could use existing quotations if we adopt non-standard procurement, cutting down the bureaucracy, but still operating legally. We can do that in time, provided the planning permission is forthcoming, which hopefully it will. So it's option D that is being recommended, and to achieve that it means setting aside parts of the council's contracts and procurement regulations as set out in the legals that in the report. Implementation and implementation strategy is set out, covering all the legal issues, communication between the stakeholders, Sports Trust, Regional Health, Local District Council, and others. And this covers procurement, currently with likely costs, delivery and commissioning, tenure and handover. The business plan proposes that the lease should contain a requirement on which to provide information on usage, which is fair enough. Failure to comply with that, of course, would enable the council to determine the lease. That's in the white paper. The programme is as follows. Hopefully planning permission this month, February 2019. The business plan hopefully will be approved tonight. Market exploration complete in March. Construction cost established and validated in March. Contractor appointed for the main construction in March. A start on site in July of this year. Practical completion by December. Project handover report January 2020. Defects corrections complete December 2020. Lessons learned report January 2021. So, for all practical purposes, we hope that completion will be at the end of 2019 December. And I think I'm not going to read all the other bits and bobs because I leave it now open to your discussion.
Thank you, Councillor James. I want to confirm, because tonight we're only making recommendations, there's no decision. Right?
That's right.
Yes, because you said the decision.
We're recommending that the business plan is and that the contract and procurement regulations be disapplied and applied with modifications in relation to the contract to the building as set out in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Guildford.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say, praise and well done to us for getting it to this stage this quickly, under the pressures that, the unitary and everything else that's going on. I support the project, obviously, but, as I said before, it sticks in my throat that the health economy aren't contributing to it as such. Have I missed in the paper have we approached them, because part of the recommendation was to continue looking to see if we could get monies out of the health economy. So my first question would be, has there been any work in that area? And two, we talk about leaving something, a legacy, something for our residents of the district. And only because I'm from the health economy as such, I would hate to be in a position where, and this has happened at the hospital at times, where it's full to capacity or whatever, and the Daventry residents can't use the facility for external residents outside of Northamptonshire, if they even can. So has there been any thoughts around that?
Thank you. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Alder.
Yeah, I'm glad we're not going over the merits. The merits of this proposal have been agreed. It's going to happen. And what is nice to see is the energy that the officers are putting into getting it done. And I think that's where our focus needs to be now, is looking at the programme, supporting our officers politically where they need it, and getting the job done. I fully support it, and I'm excited to see the end of the project. And I hope we keep to schedule and keep to budget, and I'm sure we will with the quality of officers we have. Thank you.
Great indeed. Thank you for that. Councillor Shepherd.
Chairman, thank you. I agree that the decision has been made. I'd like to make just a couple of points. Before doing so, I would remind members that although we have made the decision, that was after exceptional deviations from our set of policy. As to grant, our set of policy is to assess, and we assessed this, and the application scored 33 out of 100, 50 being the pass mark. Even if it were successful, the grant process would require 50% contribution. As to risk management, it is stated quite firmly here that value for money assessment is just impossible. I just mentioned those by way of opening. We have bent over backwards to accommodate the needs and requests of Reach for Health, and I suggest that we should consider carefully further concessions that are inherent in option D. Before coming on to that, can I just mention two other points? We talk about the cost, and the cost is of a capital of supposedly 1.46, 1.48, sorry. And that is, of course, assuming that we can indeed assign the benefit to us of the quotations that currently have been given to Reach for Health. That's not covered. I assume we can assign the benefit of those quotations. But however, the cash cost to us is not just 1.48, because we're told that 2.6 million is the rent foregone. So arguably, and I say arguably because I accept that it's not an immediate payment, but arguably a proper assessment of the cash cost is 1.48 plus 2.6, which is 3.08. I just mentioned that by way of background. The lease has been mentioned, and the requirement has been documented of the tenant telling us what he's doing. I suggest, and I'm sure that those drafting the lease will agree, that that's not at all good enough. What, of course, we would expect to see in a lease is a user clause requiring the tenant to stay open broadly for the business that he's doing, i.e. the functionality of Reach for Health. So this is almost a personal lease to an individual, which can't be assigned, which can't be sublet. I see nodding, which is great. That's exactly my point. So it's a personal lease that would guarantee the business stays open. And if the business failed, there would be I would like to think, a short rolling break clause. So the tenant could exercise a break clause to surrender the lease to us in the event of the business failing. In addition, of course, to our seeking to forfeit the lease if the business did fail. Now, those are technical points. However, the major deviation that we're now considering is to disapply the standing orders that we would normally apply to contracts. and to go for option D, as opposed, frankly, Chairman, to option C. Now, option C sounds to me entirely unexceptional. Lower cost option, providing the building fit for purpose, has a reasonable design life, we could demonstrate transparency in the procurement process. Okay. Whereas option D, which is recommended, implies the inherent risks, risk 6. And all those risks, of course, are very apparent because they're naturally apparent when you disapply standing orders to go for an odd and otherwise, I dare say unlawful, but otherwise outwith our normal approach of contractual processes. So option C, to me, seems frankly the obvious thing to do. Now, the only disadvantage apparently with option C is it will take a little longer. Now, mention has been made of the planning commission, of the planning application. Now that, I suggest, and possibly the chairman of planning can help, is not imminent. This report was written, I suspect, before the 24th of January. On the 24th of January, Chairman, a wedge of new documentation was filed on behalf of the applicant. And the applicant, of course, made the application of planning in August, and he hasn't exactly got on with it. But he filed another batch of documents on the 24th of January, only a few days ago. So I can't really share the optimism of some reflected in the report that the Planning Commission will be granted this month. Now, if I'm wrong, maybe Councillor Osborne can help on that point. I presume also, because the planning application is pretty well from us, I know it's not from us, we're sponsoring. Well, yes, we're sponsoring it. It's in the name of the applicant. It's effectively our application. I agree it's arguable. And I presume if it were our application, it would go to full committee rather than be delegated. If it were our application. So is this application going to full committee? Is it actually really going to be in February? My point, Chairman, is that if it's not so imminent of being in February, then planning itself is going to be a delaying factor. And we're not actually risking very much by going for option C. So the point I'm making, Chairman, is that if we are minded to proceed as generally is recommended in this report, the very significant risks of option D, which are clearly outlined in the risk profile, will be avoided. And as we're having to wait for the Planning Commission anyway, there's a delay inherent in that, I do not see really any risk, any significant risk in option C. The only factor against option C is the Section 24 threat, and we know absolutely nothing about that. We know that it could come, presumably, in a couple of months' time, it could come out later. So, Chairman, that's all my only representations, which if necessary, I would have to repeat to Council that I do think that option C is the one.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Can I just ask Maria to... Do you want to say something first, Chairman of Planning? Because that's been mentioned a few times.
Well, as far as when will it be heard of planning, I gather it will be in late February. I know nothing else besides that. Okay. All planning applications, if it comes from this council, if it's from this council, and I don't know whether it is or not, it will definitely come to committee. If it's not from this council and it doesn't receive any statutory objections from the local parish or town council or any councillor can call it in with a valid planning reason to make sure it goes to planning committee. There has to be a valid planning reason. Otherwise it could be dealt with under delegated powers. That's as I understand it.
Thank you. Was there a planning meeting last night?
But, no there wasn't, but I believe Maria wants to come back at that, but I do want another point. Yeah. The other point I wish to raise is the Council's Constitution and financial regulations states, and it's on page 206, it requires any capital scheme or project included within the approved total budget of the borough excluding £250,000 must be given specific detailed schemes approved by council. Well, that's been done, but it wasn't done with the business plan.
Oh, okay.
So my point is, the business plan is here now, but you approved the budget last time. Now, do our regulations say that you can approve a budget and then later put a business plan with it, or you consider the business plan before you consider the budget?
Like, just on that point,
just on a very specific point, we always do it this way. The budget is always approved first of all in this case, and the business plan comes later, which is the budget itself is the principle. We then work up sufficient detail to come back to them and say, this is what we think you wanted to do, is the exact what you want to do. So it's absolutely sound in that respect.
Thank you, well, I hand over to Ruth on 20 points.
Yeah, because the development is actually on land owned by Daventry District Council, albeit it's on a long-term lease to the Sports Trust, under the scheme of delegation, it will be determined by the planning committee.
It will come to committee.
Was any other plan matters at it?
No.
And was it this month, this month?
We'll know what's on the agenda for this month sometime next week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a great deal of sympathy for Councillor Shepherd's view that option C may be preferable. Though, in my opinion, there's insufficient detail in the report regarding the implications of recommendation 2. Certainly insufficient detail regarding the safeguards that will be in place and the oversight in place following any disapplication of conduct and procurement regulations. Those regulations exist for a good reason. They provide transparency and safeguards in terms of value for money, and the public have a consistent and valid concern that the public sector doesn't deliver good value for money in projects that it undertakes. So, I'm really looking for some degree of reassurance from our officers that there will be safeguards in place regarding contracts and procurement, even if they fall outside of our normal regulations. Because we can't. I'm sure they'll do a professional thing. They'll analyse each of the bids that come in or whatever it may be. But as a member, I need to be given assurances that we're not giving carte blanche to a project that may just run wildly over budget if we don't go through normal and established processes.
Councillor, do you want to answer that point? Sorry, Councillor.
I can do, Chairman.
You're a good councillor for a second, sorry.
Certainly not. If I can perhaps, well, I can't draw his attention to what the thing has to say, but I will read it or leisure later. With the mitigation text for risk 6, I can't read this out because these particular words are not words that would cause the council any commercial difficulty. This risk will be mitigated by obtaining competitive quotations for the main developments of the works, except where they're not applicable, such as utility connection costs, and using external quantities made to further validate costs. In fact, what I can say, without again compromising the council's commercial position, is we're happily in what I call an informal competitive dialogue, where we have two quite key operators seeking to provide us with the main building, which is quite a healthy position to be in terms of the commercial position. So I'm relatively relaxed about that. Yes, we don't have the formal procedural safeguards, and that is always uncomfortable, but in terms of the commerciality of it, I'm relatively comfortable.
Thank you. Councillor Hills.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry that Councillor Shepherd still is very much against this project, really.
I didn't say that, did I?
I think that's a shame.
I didn't say that.
What I would say is that he's entitled to his opinions, but I cannot agree. I cannot agree. We've had many discussions on this. I know that the officers have said, and I thank them for the speed in which they pushed this through. I really am grateful on that. Although I went against their advice, I really appreciate what's been done on this. There was a business plan submitted, in my opinion, properly by Reach for Help. We've always done and allowed a budget before we've had the business plans. That's the way we normally operate. We need to note that timescales are tight. We need to move this forward. If so, Reach for Help will relocate to new premises on the Western Avenue Sports Park site, and DDC will have protection. As to the options, D is the one recommended. and I fully agree and ask members to support this. You can all see the outline programme, and I refer you to the conclusions, and it says the project will deliver a new purpose-built premises in a suitable location, providing Reach with a modern and efficient building. It will enable Reach to expand its operation and extend its services to more users. There's double the amount of capacity, there's a couple of meeting rooms and training rooms, and there's also work that they can do with public health. The likely synergies between the activities of Reach and the Sports Trust are also useful. Overall, the proposed approach should deliver value for money. In delivering a building which is suitable for purpose but does not go too far beyond that, whilst offering resilience in the event that Reach cease to operate for any reason, and we are covered. I would say to members of Strategy, let's move this forward. We've had many discussions. We can't keep going over old ground. Let's look forward. I would ask you to agree the business plan as to option D. And the next step is planning. And I understand that this will, and I'm always the opinion that it would have to go in front of the committee. I totally agree with Maria on that. And I understand that will be sometime this month. So let's move this forward and let's go ahead and vote on this and get things moving.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. At one point, to be fair to Councillor Shepherd, I didn't get the impression he was actually against it. He accepted the fact that Council wanted to happen. What he was saying was he prefers option C rather than D, and he explained the reasons for that. So I don't think he's against it. He accepted the fact, maybe he was originally, he just accepted the Council view on this. So I think that's only be fair to Councillor
Shepherd. In that case, I'll withdraw that, but I will say I'm still unhappy that we talk about delays and holding things up and things like that.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I've been working in modular buildings, although I'm now retired. In 1992 I first started working in modular buildings to the biggest companies worldwide. I can tell you that it's the only way to go forward with buildings to be built this quickly. You can turn a box into anything you want it to be, and that's basically what we've got with the modular building. So it can be changed into any other form of building at any time very, very quickly. So if for some reason Reach Health didn't exist in the future, God forbid, then it will still be our building on our land. So I have to go with option D, simply because in modular, or option C, sorry, it does state would probably be too slow to deliver. Now, if that is the case, then option D is the only one we should be supporting. So I would like councillors to get behind this and support it.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Alder.
Yeah, it's just to raise the point from Councillor Shepherd. I appreciate you drawing that remark. I think it's good that we have people that are scrutinising and looking at the risks and looking at exploring mitigation. Councillor Brown did the same. I think that's so important. We're on a tight schedule here and we need all eyes on this stuff to making sure that we deliver, again, safe and legal is a nice word, and a great asset for the area. So I appreciate the input from those that are questioning and scrutinising what we're doing.
That's the phrase, isn't it? Safe and legal. Okay. That's very helpful. There's no other comments.
Yeah,
sorry, Councillor Shepherd.
Sorry, I don't know whether Councillor Morgan was going to raise the same point. I mean, I actually flagged up before Christmas. Is he taking that point?
Well, I think Councillor Morgan go first. Thank
you. Councillor, I did have my hand up actually. The point that I wanted to raise 2 points actually, Chair. The first one was actually to support Councillor Shepherd's comments.
About what? About option C?
The whole package of comments actually. And the first point within that is perhaps for the members of Reach for Health that are here, to make sure that everybody clearly understands the concept of Section 24. We speak about it, but perhaps we haven't really dissected the implications of that enough. And perhaps that could lead us into rushing to option D rather than option C. So perhaps we need a quick exploration of that if we can.
Okay, fine.
And the second one is the point around the rent review. And again, Councillor Shepherd summarised it, again not surprising, that's a previous portfolio order. The 2.6 million plus the 1.48 gives us a 3.08 million, and the concern there around the fact there's 29 years of a peppercorn rent, and I think we should introduce a rent review at some reasonable point in time based on the performance. And I also wanted to be reassured, picking up Councillor Shepherd's point about the nature of the let, such as subletting and so on and so forth. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask, at the very least, have a mechanism in there for a review at, say, 5 or 10 years, for instance.
That's a fair point. Thank you. Councillor Shepherd?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this point about rent review, not only would it be, I think, reasonable from our perspective, it would also incentivise regional to obtain other funding from, as Councillor Gifford mentioned, the health economy. If they can demonstrate, say, 3 or 4 or 5 good years of turnover of service to the community, they've got the space in this new building to do other things as well as to what they already do. And if there was a rent review, say in 5 years' time, say to 50% of market rent. Now that's easily doable in a lease. We could agree that, give them now, and thereafter 50% market rent. Maybe another 5 or 10 years it goes to 75%, but those are negotiable. They'd obviously want to keep it at 50. I welcome Councillor Morgan's suggestion that there shall be some form of rent review, and I invite officers to have a dialogue about those sorts of percentages.
And on their business plan, they're saying they're going to increase their usage, the number of users. So hopefully the business continues to go up. They're in a better position to actually cover rent.
Exactly. That would make the whole economic position from our point.
That sounds very sensible. Just going back to a point that Councillor Skilford raised about the NHS. I did actually, with my contacts at senior level, NEN and NHS locally, I did actually ask a question about funding from them. They say in capital funding, they've already spent all their money. Basically, all the projects that would have been allocated, and there's more in the pipeline, a lot more in the pipeline. And on revenue, that's also fully committed. So there wasn't any joy there in the short term. But I think the point here is the reach for help can actually prove the case over the years ahead. And I'm sure if the business is as good as they're planning to be, then I'm sure they'll be able to become self-sufficient anyway over time. And I think the rent review sounds entirely reasonable, actually. Councillor Hill, are you happy with that? To be considered by the officers.
Yeah, I think it's right to consider it. I think 5 years may be a little bit short, but I think we could look for a review. I've nothing against that. I just wanted to add something regarding the NHS and Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Griffin and himself attended the LSP meeting, and the National Health was there. I think it was Dr. Stevens or somebody was there, and we did raise it, and the answer was very, very doubtful. So, I'm like you, I would like to see them put money in, but you're not going to get it. So what we've got to do, if we're going to leave a legacy to our residents, and this is what we're talking about, and something that can become, quite honestly, a regional centre, particularly when it becomes a unitary, because, let's face it, all of our projects that we've got at the moment, they're all going to come under the jurisdiction of the unitary in due course.
Yeah. So the usage will be there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. I assume they pay rent on the building that they're in at the moment, even though it's a reduced rate, I assume. And are we? So I'm getting a bit confused now. So are we still doing a reduced rate on this one, or is it no rental at all?
Order.
At the moment, currently, they pay, I can send you that, £12,000 a year.
Double 800.
Pardon?
Double 800.
Yeah, 12,800, and a peppercorn rent would be nothing.
And so if they're paying 12,800 at the moment, and they've been going for 20 odd years and surviving. Why is it to nothing? You know, why is it to nothing? You know,
Councillor Morgan. Sorry, Councillor James, you want to come in?
Actually, I'm opposed to a rent review. I know on this. For the simple reason you've mentioned figures of rent that they pay now, which is not easy for them to do, and that's a subsidised rent effectively, because the premises they currently occupy are worth 18,000 a year. So, you know, this was sold to us, and I say sold to us in inverse, on the basis that it was going to be our legacy, the people of Daventry and district.
Sorry.
Now, how on earth could Reach pay even half rent if the rental value of the modular building, that car park, use of the car park, is 89,000 a year? They couldn't afford to do it. The business would have to go.
We're not asking them to, Councillor James, are we? We're not asking them to.
Would have to go through the rent.
We're not asking them to. It's a rent review, it's a rent review, it's a review.
Yeah, a review to see that half.
Sorry.
The current rental value is.
I'm getting worried, we're getting off track a bit. Go on, Simon.
Sorry, just for clarity, a rent review, as those who deal with them understand, has to be done against a set of rules. It isn't a sort of open negotiation. Yeah. So, Councillor Jenkins suggested things that would meet that set of clarity. 50% of market rate in 5 years' time is something you could mathematically and professionally do. What it isn't is a kind of vague, well, we'll make it up later. That doesn't work. So if council wants to do something different to what was decided in December, that's absolutely fine. We just need to know what parameters he wants to work with, and we can, obviously subject to the other side agreeing, achieve that. It would be possible to have some kind of stepped relationship to market rent, or some could be the figure that they pay now, indexed by inflation. There's all kinds of mechanisms one could do. But the decision of council in December was a equitable rent, and that's the reason the business plan is presented on that basis. So if council now wishes something different, that's fine, but it's going to make sure we structure it correctly in a way we can make it work.
Very good indeed. Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if people recall the long discussion that we had at the last council meeting. The rent, or the cost of the accommodation, is not the only cost. It is not the complete budget of Reach for Health. Reach for Health is undertaking to raise all the funds for all the equipment that it uses, and over that time, no doubt, there'll be more sophisticated equipment that comes along, as it always happens in the health service. There'll be more equipment. Equipment will wear out and need to be replaced, and they have taken on the job of raising the funds to make all that possible. Now, there's not any other bit of the health service that exists through voluntary funding, through funding from individuals. It's got a huge task doing this. In an ideal world, Reach for Health, because of its contribution to the NHS, and if you recall in the papers that were presented, there was a lot of information from studies done, I think it was Hull University, that demonstrated that what was the effective contribution that Reach for Health was making to the NHS.
To the wider health economy, yes.
To the wider health economy. It's in these circumstances, obviously the NHS ought to be paying for this, but the NHS are not much better placed than our county council. The NHS are not going to be in a position where they are going to come in. We cannot put Reach for Health into a position in which we say Reach for Health will be our legacy, but it's going to be a time-limited legacy. I just feel that our legacy has got to be given. It has got to be given in the sense that, look, we believe in this project. It's the one thing that we want to remain. We know that the new unitary is going to have a huge number of problems. We know that it is not going to be focusing on Daventry. It's going to be wider than Daventry district. We know that with all its problems, that it will be compelled to start looking in the future for all sorts of ways in which you can reduce its funding. And I just feel that if we are really serious about talking about Richborough Health being a legacy that this council leaves behind, we have got to make sure that that is protected. And I don't think you do that by putting clauses in the lease.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I want to just say that I think the County Council looked at the funding that the NHS get. So I'm quite sure they are in the same position as the NHS, because the County Council position is quite different to the local NHS, even though we're quite right to say there are a lot of pressures on the NHS locally. Councillor Guildford.
Okay, a few points here. I think I've got 4 in total. Yes, we agreed to peppercorn rent. I didn't quite realise when I made the decision the impact that they were already paying rent. I'm leaning towards having some form of rent review because no one knows what's going to happen in the future. Yes, I understand Councillor Ritchie's argument about they'll have a lot of cost in the first year's kitting it out, but a rent review could be 5 years down the line when they've done their investment. And the health economy is changing, and so I won't just listen to me in case I go into interest, but the new GP contract is out, and it's been out 2 days, and the whole health economy is changing, which means it's now going to be primary care led as opposed to acute led, and there's funding now coming from the bottom up going out, which is available for all these sort of facilities. So that proves the health economy is changing. I mean, that GP contract was changed in 1999, 2004. It's a drastic change. So I think we'd be a little bit foolish to not allow some form of review, but put in that's technically correct myself. With the whole economy, the whole world's changing.
Very quickly. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Jade. Of course, if we track back through the evening, we can see the whole thing of the evening's been about the uncertainty that the unitary provides us. And particularly, that's where the Section 24 plays in, which we haven't quite clarified. But the real point there is a level of risk, a level of uncertainty, and it's influencing the way we make our decisions and change our behaviour. For me personally, I'm not entirely comfortable with option D. However, I think there has to be an element of shared risk here. And that's why I really want us to adopt the option to actually give a 5-year rent review, as Simon outlined. And as Councillor Randall, I think, was beginning to say, almost we were in astonishment. They're paying $12,800 now. We're not asking them to pay anything. So therefore, it's not unreasonable, but essentially what is about a £64,000 saving in the next 5 years to say there'll be rent review in 5 years' time, get stabilised, grow the service, deliver the services, and that's still a good legacy. And remember, a legacy is not a one-way street. A legacy is also a legacy to the future taxpayers of Daventry or the unitary as well. So that's my position on it. I think we need to make sure we're sensible for the future as well. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for that. Bear in mind, we already foregoing 12,800 or they're saving that much money.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. Councillor James, I'm conscious of time, so it's nearly 9:15. I have to ask if you're going to continue. I'm just wondering the recommendations. Should we have one regarding if members go green? Because the option is the recommended option, will also align with a 5-year review.
I think it's ridiculous. I really do. Okay. Because some of these rent reviews are highly complex. There's a question arises, is the use to be taken into account, the user's use, that is reach value, in which case it would be favourable to them, but it would still hurt them in the pocket. Or is it to be an open market thing having regard to any possible use? They're extremely complex things. Some of them are pages and pages long. The whole point is this: if they struggle to pay the rent of $12,800 on the martyrs, how on earth could they pay a substantial proportion of $89,000 a year in current value terms now? They couldn't do it.
Councillor James, should we take something back to the council?
Yes, I think...
Because I'm just conscious again of time, and I think the officers are happy with that. Is that okay, Simon?
That's fine, Chairman. I think, given the complexity of this, I think we've got the sense of where members want to go.
Yes, that's right.
We will seek to work up something which we can work practically, but achieve the spirit of what the meeting is looking for. And then obviously council consider whether that's right or not.
Okay, thank you. Right, strategy group members, you've got 2 recommendations. Do you agree with them both?
Yeah, but we're not agreeing the review, are we?
No, that's 2 before you.
Just before us, yeah.
2 before you. Let me show your hands. Those in agreement. Those against. 1 against. 2 against. 2 against. No, just the 2 in front of you.
The two,
recommendations. So going back to council for more detail about the review.
Yeah.
And the options.
So it might, yeah.
So it's passed by 2 against, the rest in favour. Passed, yeah. Thank you. It's now 9:15. So I can ask you members, do you want to continue the meeting for the last item?
Continue and finish the last one, Chairman.
No, you're not hungry now.
I want a bit.
Okay, we have one last item. Sports facilities investment strategy adoption. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chairman. This is
Yes, Councillor Hills.
Right, I just want to make sure everybody was sorry. This is the draft sports investment strategy, which is presented for adoption. Recommendations are that the consultation comments outlined in Appendix A be noted. And please note that there is Appendix B that is under big paper, so that will come further down the line. Basically, the draft report can be subject to minor editorial changes. The confidential actions sent out in Appendix B shall be undertaken with a budget allocation of £75,000. The consultation has now been completed. It ran for roughly about 3 months. The responses are shown in Appendix A, and I would basically like just to outline some of the points on this. Regarding unitary, basically this strategy would no longer apply, but we could, in fact, provide a basis for a new unitary authority. Once adopted, the strategy will support the corporate strategic plan to promote healthy, safe and strong communities and individuals and encourage healthy lifestyles. Other points will basically value for money. The prices offered to reach and health appear to be highly competitive when measured against normal benchmark quotations. It says that the rise in costs are unlikely, and basically offers the greater potential. So this is the strategy. It's there for you to see. You've got the responses. I would just ask everybody to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Any comments or observations? No? Do you agree with the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor. In at the end, past the first one. That concludes tonight's meeting.